Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to call the our special council meeting to order, 2:30 on Monday, November 4th. Firstly, we respectfully acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional territories of Algonquin-speaking peoples of the Casepsum and Songhees nations, whose historical stewardship of these lands continue today. Item 2, approval of the agenda. May I have a mover and seconder to adopt today's special council agenda? Thank you very much. Councillor Grove and Councillor Jordison. Any opposed? Seeing none, we'll move on. Motion carries. Open it up at this point in time for public participation. At this point in time, we'll open the floor to, I understand there's no one that's registered virtually. And if anyone from the public wants to speak at this time, seeing none, I'm going to move on to item 4, which is delegations. Yes, Councillor Day.
I just want to acknowledge that because of the storm and the power outage today, that it would be very difficult for many people in Colwood to participate in this meeting. And I really think that we should give some consideration to I know we don't get a lot of public participation when we're talking service review. I think it's something important to try to foster, but it would be very difficult for people to participate. A number of members of council are still without power at this time. And I just wanted to bring it up that it is worthy of consideration that in being open and transparent and inviting public participation, not everyone is able to participate when our power is out. Cell phones aren't working, internets aren't working, and people have very limited ability to join us.
Thank you very much, Councillor Day. You're absolutely right. They pay me the big bucks to make the decisions. And, I considered everything. I considered the fact that, yes, a lot of people won't be able to tune in virtually. But what I considered is the first 2 service review meetings and the lack of participation. And lastly, why I decided to go ahead with this is because the very fact that this meeting is recorded. So all things considering, I made the decision to proceed. It's hard enough to herd you guys around the table. And when I finally get agreement with everybody, I don't want to lose the opportunity. So thank you very much. It was very considered of you to think of that. So it was thought of. Thank you. Okay, at this point in time, I'm going to move on to item 4, delegations. And we have Mr. Grant Brown from the West Shore Parks and Rec to do a presentation. Grant, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So it's great to join you and give you a bit of an overview of where we're projecting how the society is operating for this year, and then more so going into what we're looking at for 2025 for your consideration. During today's presentation, I'm going to briefly cover the financial projections for 2024 and major variations that are leading to that variances. The 2025 budget considerations, major expense increases for next year, an overview of the 5-year financial plan, summary of our capital projects for 2025, which are quite extensive, as well as an overview of the 5-year capital plan, the 5-year reserve continuity, and the impact on our requisition to each municipality. So for 2024, we've seen quite a good performance through most of the areas. We don't have the big increase in admissions like I presented last year. We're seeing in aquatics and fitness in particular that we are hitting capacity. So we're not seeing a drop in admissions, but we're not having that big, large increase that we saw in previous years. As we're now finding, we're hitting 80, 85 people in the weight room at a time in evenings, and the pool is at capacity for most of their swims. So where we're seeing the increases this year is more so it's spread across the board in a number of areas with increased services that we've offered, looking more increased rentals in the ice, indoor sports complex, golf continues to be performing strongly, and so on. And then of course, we've got the associated expenses that go with that. As we offer more, we also have more wages and whatnot. So we're looking at a 7% better than projected for operating revenue and the associated about 1% increase in the operating expenses, leading to a projected surplus of 358,000 for 2024. And of that 358,000, that all goes towards the capital asset reserve. And so that helps maintain the large facilities that, of course, are all owned and enjoyed by the public and owned by the municipalities, including the arenas, pools, roofs, and so on. A breakdown on that, one of the areas we did see quite a bit of an increase is in interest income with our reserves and so on, as we've seen with interest rates being higher, where those are starting to drop, of course. So it's not what it was before, but compared to previous years, we've seen a significant increase in interest income. Some of that is due to with some of the funds going into some short-term GICs to be able to take advantage of some of those interest rates. And again, all those interest goes into the capital reserve fund to maintain the capital assets. Programs have seen a net improvement versus budget of 134,000. The key contributors to that, as mentioned, is ice. So daytime ice, we've seen a significant increase in the hockey academies, which the nice part for that is they tend to be in association with the schools. So they're using daytime ice, which is in general where we don't have the demand. The high demand for ice is usually in evenings and weekends. So it's filling some of our vacancies. If you go to the Q Center during the day, for example, you'll see a lot of the academies there. There's not a lot of downtime as far as the ice goes. Golf, as mentioned, has continued to have a strong year. We've had quite a resurgence in birthday parties. As far as a percentage of the total revenue, it's not very high, but it's been quite significant this year as far as weekends and being full. So that was something that went away during the COVID restrictions. We brought them back last year, and that's been very popular. And then the other one is the indoor sports complex. And so that like bring some of that information to you as going forward is the changes that were made in relation to the conversion from curling. We're seeing that from roughly where it's about 20 hours use per week when it was curling to now upwards of 180 hours per use of week now that it was switched over to the indoor sports complex. And then a few open positions, which we deal with on an annual basis, just on people starting later or on vacancies that come through. And then some other ups and downs in the other areas leading to the 358,000 projected surplus for 2024. Moving into 2025, in our consideration there, our single biggest expenses each year is our wages, when we're roughly 80% of our costs are wages. So we have a 3% collectively bargained increase for 2025. And to put that in perspective, a 1% wage increase has a value of just shy of $90,000 or 1.4% on a requisition increase. So that's always the challenge we have each year is with so much of our costs being on wages, that every percent that goes up, of course, to ensure that we don't have a exceptionally large requisition request increases, we have to deal with that with fee increases to services, and just looking at offering more programs. We had a 10% insurance premium increase. That's been continuing on for the last few years. We have seen now that we're starting to see more bids on our insurance. The primary driver of that is our property insurance. But we've now moved into where our insurance costs per year are second after wages is the next biggest single expense we have to maintain it's about $120 million worth of assets that are at that facility that are mostly owners. So hopefully we'll see some of that start to drop and level off, so we're not seeing such large increases. A 5 to 10% utility rate increase. The nice part on that is with the improvements we've been making to our mechanical areas, such as replacing air handling units that were gas air handling units with electric and so on, the changes to the update in the chiller that was in the Q arena, that we've been able to offset all of those increases by making energy usage improvements from our mechanics. Increased workload on staff to manage the growing service delivery we've seen over the last few years, and as well as continue to increase our annual contributions to the capital asset reserve to make our way towards being fully funded as far as assets go.
Quick question on that slide. So you show the potential increase on the requisition due to collective bargaining is 3% equals 1.4. So do you have a graph later on that shows the percent requisition increase for all these other things that you've got listed? Do you summarize that?
Not as percentages. I've got the total dollar values on the next slide though.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Yeah. So speaking of that, so the non-discretionary, so the 3% wage increase, as well as insurance premium increases for 2025 come to 325,000. 269,000 of that is wages. And so that equivalent aspect is about 4% increase year over year. Then our discretionary increases for next year are 560, just shy of 562,000. Increased transfers to capital reserve, 3 new regular positions to help deal with the maintaining what we've been offering. Over the last few years, we've been doing a lot of our service increases by relying on auxiliary positions. So we've also converted some of those hours into 2 regular roles to make more meaningful positions to ease in recruitment, as well as to provide more value for those in those positions. The new positions are a programmer in aquatics, parks maintenance worker, and administrative systems assistant. In particular, pointing out that programmer in aquatics, we haven't had the challenges getting the hiring that a lot of aquatics departments have through the region. However, we do now have roughly 80 staff doing what 5 years ago 50 used to do. And just the aspect of managing and monitoring all those extra staff to do those hours, deal with schedules, sick calls, and so on. The 2-person leadership team in that department has been struggling. And so we've added in a 4-day-a-week regular part-time programmer to help out with that. And then as well as into the conversion of 2 new roles, a program assistant in the arena and events to help out with the running of the arenas, as well as facility maintenance worker in the Q center to ensure that facility is being maintained as we expect. Overall, the total expense increase for 2025 is just over $1 million, which excludes the master plan project. We've increased our fees, program offerings, and performance expectations by just shy of 805,000, which is made up of an average of a 4% fee increase, increased expectations on programs, and adding more services. The difference for that is being made up through a requisition increase of 235,000 or 3.9% to compensate that difference. Last year's increase was 4%, and in 2023 it was 5%. So we're staying on track with trying to get that requisition increase on an annual basis to continue to drop, as well as it matches what came through and was approved with the 5-year plan when I was here this time last year. So as far as revenues go for 2025, as mentioned, it's 804,000 or a 10.2% increase from 2024's expected revenues. That's made up of a combination of fee increases as well as increased expectations on programs. And then we've done a conservative estimation of increased revenues of 3.8% on future years. For expenditures, lower percent increase over the year, but on a larger number, so it's a larger amount. 7.5% increase in expenses in 2025 over what was approved for 2024, and then took that same 3.8% through future years. I am happy to say that in 2025's budget, cost recovery is 57.41%, which is 0.9% improvement in cost recovery over the 2024 budget, as well as 2.72% improvement in cost recovery over 2023. So we're still definitely making improvements as far as trying to increase the overall percentage tax burden on the taxpayer and ensuring that our user pay is covering up the increases in our expenses. And I apologize for the typo I noticed on here is that the 2025 capital project list. It's quite extensive of $1.9 million in capital next year. I did want to highlight on there that a few of items have been listed as carry forwards. We are finding with a lot of the specialized equipment we have, when they're being ordered, but after budget approval, they're taking 12 to 16 months to arrive. So some of the specialized field equipment, for example, were ordered around April, May last year, and they still are en route. And so there's a number of these items which were approved in 2024, which are carrying forward into 2025. So all of our capital projects are funded through the reserves. So there just won't be a reduction in the reserve this year that'll come out for next year. So there isn't any new tax funding needed for that.
Question, Councillor Day?
Yeah, thank you. Just on, if I could get you to flip back one slide, you were talking about the cost to provide services, both going up for admissions as well as going up for the requisitions. And I'm just read through your report, and the average increases are a little over 4% for admissions and indoor facilities and arenas. Your outdoor facilities have gone up about 5%, but your golf is down at only 2.5%. And I'm just wondering if you could explain, why is golf special? Everybody else is paying
Yeah.
a lot more.
Yeah, on some of that, we do comparisons, which there aren't a lot of comparisons for our golf course, and provide feedback from from the users as well. And so whenever we do any of the fee increases, we compare across the region. So we try to ensure that we're not getting too far out of line with anybody else. And so we would have done that with golf, do that with our pool, fitness admissions, and so on. Sometimes the percentage will adjust because it could just be based on, for the most part, a lot of our fees are quite small. So even going up 10 cents, for example, can be a significant percentage. And so that can bump that up. We try to aim, starting in 2021, we tried to ensure that our fee increase percentage matches whatever our requisition increase was. That was a decision made through the board support, was just trying to share that load between the general taxpayer and the user when we're looking at our operations. And we've tried to continue on taking that piece.
Yeah, so I'm not as familiar with more recent years, but in the past, golf has always been a very popular service that's offered at West Parks and Rec. And I'm just wondering if it continues to be as in demand as it used to be.
Yeah, we're still quite a bit than it has in the past. This year, we've noticed we've had it this fall. Unfortunately, it dropped a bit with it's been a fairly wet fall so far. But over the last couple of years, it's certainly coming out of the restrictions. It was a significant increase in usage where we were starting to actually see some of our highest usage in about 10 to 15 years. A lot of that was because when activity was permitted and they came back, it's outdoors, there's space, it met a lot of the requirements. And so it's still continuing to be a much higher demand than it was, say, 5 years ago. This year, our number of rounds have dropped slightly from last year for the first time in the last 4 years.
Okay. And for your outdoor facilities, I would assume that's, your soccer fields and all the other wonderful facilities there. They are still going up quite a bit. Is that impacting their availability?
No, we haven't seen a drop on that. A lot of that is because the actual hourly rate is so small. So that would be one of the examples to have it jump 25 cents. It ends up being a higher percentage than, say, on something else. Because an outdoor field for a youth, for example, is about $12 an hour versus to rent the indoor sports field $50 an hour. So to get that same, you end up running a bit of a percentage issue on that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great questions, Councillor Dave. I'll let you proceed.
So as far as the projects for next year, just a couple of ones to point out, the pickleball project, which the ownership nicely approved, that's currently in process as far as the RFP is out, looking for a consultant for that. So the majority of that work will start next year. Hence the carry forward is listed up there. Some of the other pieces, we're going to be converting another one of our Zambonis. So originally all the Zambonis were propane. One was converted a few years ago to electric. We're converting another to electric next year, and then another one gets converted in 2028, I believe, and then all of the fleet will be electric at that point, which has significant environmental impacts as well as some of the airflow filtration mechanics that are required in arenas due to propane will no longer be needed, which is also leads to some mechanical savings as well as maintenance savings as well as energy use. And then there's a variety of other pieces of equipment that are being replaced through next year, all of which how they're funded is on the right-hand side, 1.7 million coming out of capital reserve. We act as the landlords on behalf of the ownership for the library. So that's covered through contributions from the library as well as yourselves. And as well as we've got some significant server replacements next year in IT, which are covered by those reserves. It's just a high-level overview of the 5-year capital plan. So you can see the significant work that's going forward. Moving into 2026, we've got 800,000 in major site maintenance. Half of that is the 50-plus Senders roof. Some of the roofs are quite large. As we had last year, we replaced $1 million roof over the pool. So there's single projects that are quite large. As mentioned there in the 408,000 in 2028 fleet, a significant part of that is the conversion of the last propane Zamboni to electric, as well as in 2029, the road sign is being replaced, and a number of these are covered by reserves where we do contributions on an annual basis. So there's not a significant tax effect on the time that equipment comes up. Moving into the reserve continuity, this is the one I definitely like to highlight when I come to Colwood. Annually, we've been, for the last number of years, we've been steadily increasing the contribution to the reserve, so we're able to maintain the capital. One of the ones I wanted to point out is when you get to 2029, we are nearly now contributing what our estimated expenditures are. In essence, fully funding the capital projects to maintain on the site. We'll continue to grow that as a nominal amount on an annual basis, just to try to stay ahead of inflation. But if you recall, a few years ago, we were in the red, running out of funds to maintain the capital as of 2027, and now we've got no concerns moving forward as we keep moving into maintaining all of the capital and so on. They're broken into two reserves. The equipment replacement reserve are specific projects, or sorry, specific pieces of equipment. So, for example, like the road sign, as I mentioned, or the buses and whatnot, where we do annual contributions for those when they get when they're replaced. And the general capital reserve is more of a lump sum based on the large projects, the roofs, walls, interior pieces, and so on. And then as far as how the contributions go.
Sorry, Councillor Ting, quick question.
Sorry, I heard you mention the refreshment of the sign in your plan there.
Yes.
And I just wanted to check in. I'm sure you get lots of comments about it, but your illuminated sign does cause considerable amount of glare in the winter rainy season with wet roads. And I was hoping that you would look at, I don't know whether it needs some sort of an auto dimming feature. I know that, you know, on a bright sunny day, it's going to look very different, but it can cause glare on the roadway. And a significant issue that's been brought up a few times over the years. So I just thought, if you're replacing that, could you put a little star beside it and make sure you check into what your options are for auto dimming or something, so that those evenings when the sign may appear very bright and reflecting off of a wet, black, dark roadway, that it would be a little less intense.
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, definitely. I've made a note of that. We can make sure that we look at that for sure. Then we're just moving into converted assessments. So based on the agreement, this is how the ownership percentage of the society happens, as well as how the contributions towards the requisitions each year. So the average converted assessments on the region increase from 2023, because we used last year's 23 to 24, was 2.54%, with Colwood's increase of just over 2%. The Langford and Machosans were slightly higher, saw a decrease with Highlands, and a 1.53% with View Royal. So when we move over into the actual requisition, that's why you don't see a flat 3.9 across the board for everybody, because it's all based on ownership percentage from those assessments. So Colwood's increase from 2024 to 2025 is 45,000, or 3.37%. A slight decrease for Highlands, a higher than 3.9% increase for both Langford and Machosen, and View Royal slightly lower. So it's a 3.9% increase, which matches what was brought forward in the 5-year plan last year. Only 2.6 or 0.26% or 15,000 is related to operating. The majority of this increase is all capital reserve contributions. So of the 235,000, 220 is going towards capital projects, which is increases to the bus reserve from our annual contribution and our weight room based on what we're seeing replacement costs are now. The addition of contribution towards the replacement of the AstroTurf that's in the velodrome, which is an agreement with West Shore Rugby, where they're contributing a portion, but the value of that replacement, which we had appraised last year, which is due in 2030, is higher than what their contribution is. So this is for us to meet our based on that agreement, to meet our contribution portion of that. As well as to create a $100,000 contribution on an annual basis towards a new initiative fund. And so that's when we reach any sort of grant funding for projects or whatnot that require a matching funding, to allow the society to potentially self-meet those funding needs instead of needing to come back to the ownership and request additional funds beyond what was already approved for that year. So those 4 increases add up to 220,000, or 3.64% increase 2024 over 2020, or 2025 over 2024. And as mentioned, the requisition increases on target with what was approved last year in the 5-year plan. Our estimation on the taxation impact is roughly $2.34 per capita for the city of Colwood, or a 0.22% tax increase, just based on pulling up information from the financial plans, as well as the BC government population projections. And then finally, just a few statistics for Colwood. So Colwood will be sitting into next year as a 22.33% ownership of the society. 31% or 14,000 of our clients in our database are from Colwood. 34% of our memberships, 31% of our registrations, 34% of our drop-in admissions, 24% of our life clients, 36% of our visit passes, and 31% of our overall transactions are residents of Colwood. And of course, this information doesn't capture the usage that also comes out of the organized sport. So for example, Wanapuk soccer, if you play Wanapuk soccer, you're using our fields. We don't have that information. We've requested that from a lot of our user groups to try to be able to get that information, just waiting on that, as well as if there's special events, Shamrocks games, that kind of thing, that are using those facilities that the ownership is all contributing towards. Of course, there are going to be people from all over the West Shore and elsewhere. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Grant. I'm going to open it for questions. Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, Grant, for the overview. I am the Colwood representative to the board, a job which I enjoy. It's a good group of cross-section of councillors from across the region. I think you've done yourself a disservice in the sense that there's a lot of really great novel programs that are underway here as far as eking out savings, finding efficiencies, and reducing GHGs, and you know, things like the heat pumps going in and stuff like that. Maybe you can just talk about some of those programs briefly.
Through the chair. Yeah, there's been a number of partnerships. Actually, our most recent one is partnering with Colwood on a study to receive funding to do a study on the facility. And so through the years, I don't unfortunately have the numbers directly with me, but we have been significantly changing the amount of usage that happens as far as greenhouse gases, as well as other forms of energy. And so we do report that out to the board every March, which then we can pass along, of course, to the ownership to show. And so it is quite significant. If, for example, over the last 20 years, if some of those changes weren't made, it's about $1.5 million in either extra cost would have to be put on the taxpayer to do what we do now, or $1.5 million of services would have been reduced to keep it at the funding levels it currently is. So every time, if there's grant opportunities or whenever there's any mechanical infrastructure that's replaced, that is one of the key aspects that our staff does, is try to find a more efficient way of doing that, whether that's first getting a study to look at it, or sometimes we've got vendors who actually will bring things forward to try to use us as an example. So one of the big examples that what happened most recently was when the ice plant in the JDF, when the floor was replaced a few years ago, the waste energy from the waste heat from that ice process heats the entire childcare center, heats administration. And they are now in the process of seeking grant funding through BC Hydro's Clean Energy Fund to look at it. There's still more waste heat that we're hoping to take to preheat some of the hot water tanks for the pool. So it won't be able to heat the pool completely, but it will start it at a higher level. So there'll be less natural gas requirements to heat those. So it's definitely a significant aspect of what's been done over there.
Thank you. That's a great presentation, Grant. You've managed to ensure that all the pertinent information was presented. Found it very effective. We had the pleasure of, the CEO and I had the pleasure of actually sitting through the owner's presentation, which is a little more detailed. So, but you know, it's you've given me a lot of confidence. I love the way it's managed right now. So I'm feeling very confident going into this. And I love how you do that. You underpromise and overachieve. Smart guy. At this point, Councillor Day, and then we'll move on.
Thank you. I just was quickly looking through some of your changes over time. And one of the big changes that I think was really important for our community was the licensed childcare. And I see that you're doing quite well in terms of revenue over expenses in that area, which is great news. And I'm just wondering, do we have room to expand in terms of childcare, because that is an area that I continue to hear from residents is really difficult. It is hard to find good quality, regular daycare and after school care.
Yeah, through the chair. We have about 180 after-school care spots as an example, and 24 daycare spots and 60 preschool. We don't have any more space right now to add more, but what they are looking at doing is converting some. What we have seen is that the demand for part-time preschool has dropped significantly. So we are looking at right now they're in the evaluating process to try to see what we could do to convert one or two of our preschool spots or programs into another daycare. So they are looking at trying to, I think it's in the chosen room in particular, is they're looking at pulling, if they can pull that preschool spot out of there and add it to one of the others where the registration has dropped. And we might be able to add, and I think it's a 12 or 15 spot daycare into that space.
Great, thank you.
Seeing no other questions, thanks very much, Grant.
Thank you.
Can I ask our next delegation, Dr. Gorley? Charlotte, come on up. You got 10 minutes.
Thank you for this opportunity to talk to you today about litter in Colwood. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the issue and the impacts, and then I'm going to offer a few ideas and strategies to help reduce the amount of litter on our streets. So the next slide is, so as an individual who picks up litter in my neighborhood on Triangle Mountain on a regular basis, I can say with confidence that the amount has increased over the last few years, for sure. And it's becoming overwhelming, and it's becoming discouraging for those of us who do go out on our own time and pick up litter, because we don't seem to be making any headway. And I know that Clean BC did impose some restrictions this summer, which were intended to help. But from my experience, I haven't seen any decrease in litter, especially around the lids, because it makes sense that if you're getting a drink from a drive-through, you're going to get a lid, and it's going to be there. And for some reason, they seem to end up on our streets and roadways. So the next slide is I'm just hoping to raise your awareness of the increasing impact of litter and to ask for your help in reducing it here in Colwood. I want to encourage a proactive strategy. What we're doing now is reactive, but I think there are ways we can be a bit more proactive, and we can maybe save some resources using public funds rather than cleaning it up. Okay, the next one. So some of us who litter pick, we've identified some high litter areas such as Veterans, Carindale, Wishart, Stornoway, and Stuke Road. And these are mainly through traffic routes. But there are other streets that are probably just as littered. We just haven't, worked in those areas. And I know that my litter bags are filled mostly with fast food packaging, and to a lesser extent, wrapping and some things that blow out of blue boxes, especially if I pick up on the day after the blue box day. And others, my colleagues who have helped me with this, have identified more household litter left by campers or other places, and that's often around along Ocean Boulevard between the bridge and Sioux Road. Next one. So basically this slide says it all. If we tolerate it, we're just going to continue to get it. We can't ignore it, and it's not going to go away on its own. So that's why I'm hoping for some proactive results here. Next one. I have a sheet with some URLs that I'll leave here. There's lots of great research being done out there around the psychology of littering and what different communities and cities have done to help. This is just one example, but I think they all say it's a growing problem, and if we don't address it, we're going to be swamped and buried in litter. It's not only an eyesore, but it reflects the amount of respect in our community, for our community and for the residents who live here. And it's also a health hazard and an environmental hazard. Now we're starting to see needles and some bio waste as well. So that speaks to the health health aspect of it. Next one. And of course, it's not only humans that are impacted, all the living things in Colwood, humans, marine life, birds, animals, the whole ecosystem. And, you know, over the last few weeks, you've probably all seen the postings on Facebook. There are bears in the area. So just as an example, what are they finding in the litter? What are they ingesting? And, you know, how do we feel about that? Next one. So what can we do besides just continuing to pick it up? And I'd like to propose a couple of pilot programs. Some of them are really easy, just using power or positive messaging and humorous messaging, you know, to make a point that it doesn't need to happen, and to encourage people to dispose of their waste properly. We could make it more convenient by, you know, more garbage cans. I realize that is a cost, but especially in places like bus stops, and I'll use Allendale as an example. There's 2 bus stops right by the new McDonald's there, and there's no garbage cans. So people get a drink or a snack, wait for their bus, and it's just dropped. So we can be strategic about where we place things like that. We could also use pop-up cameras or encourage people with dash cam, you know, to catch them in the act. I probably need to be signage that says that, but if it's a deterrent, then that's also doing its job. If people see a sign that says, oh, I might be on camera if I toss this out, so I'll just hold on to it, then that works too. Next one, this could be a lot of fun. So there's a lot of cigarette butts, and we could have some butt voting stations, and, you know, they could be changed regularly. Cigarette butts and filters contain chemicals and hazardous materials that leach into the environment and are ingested by animals and birds and fish. Cigarette butts also pose a fire risk. This summer, when it was very hot and dry and we were in drought conditions, there were still cigarette butts on the ground and piles of leaves and things. And so we're lucky that we didn't have some fires. So again, a couple of pilot project ideas that maybe could be tried out. And next slide. So a lot of the litter that I collect comes from fast foods. And I'm thinking, well, what if they were part of the solution? What if we worked with them and, you know, reached out to them? I know the city of Victoria had a contest to encourage people to use reusable cups instead of the single-use coffee cups. Perhaps we could do something like that. Or what if, you know, we worked with the outlets, and the employee who handed the order to the person said, please don't litter. Could it be as simple as that? Or the person taking the order at the drive-through said, will this be in your reusable cup today? So just these little nudges to try and change behavior. So what do managers and employees of fast food outlets have as ideas? They have inside information, and they probably have a much better idea of what could be done locally and corporately to reduce litter and waste. Maybe the city could support fast food outlets to conduct litter cleanups. And that would be good PR for them too. They were able to do some more of those with our help. Next one, there's a lot of us out there who pick up litter on our own time using our own resources. But it could be easier to dispose of what we collect and gather data. So for instance, if I'm out walking in my neighborhood and I'm picking up litter, I have to bring it home and put it in my household garbage. So that is not, you know, counted as litter. So we don't really know how much litter we're picking up and generating. There's often long distances between receptacles. And so some of those receptacles have openings that are too small to get a bag of litter in. So then we have to pack it home. So I'm just wondering, could the city encourage some more random acts of litter picking and make it a little bit easier and convenient for those of us who do that on a regular basis? And next one. And of course, this is an obvious one, working with the schools, working with kids, so that, you know, they become our advocates. And, you know, maybe we could create a unique slogan. I remember as a kid, it was "Don't be a litter bug." And that seems to have gone by the wayside, but maybe we could come up with something unique that would identify us as a Colwood, environmentally conscious community as far as litter goes. And then, of course, it would be lovely if litterers were accountable for their actions. And, you know, we have the tools to do that. We have bylaws, we have provincial legislation. But, you know, there are other things we could do. And I'm really supportive of research. So how could we support and enable research on littering? How can we determine what are the items? How much is it? Where does it happen? When does it happen? What patterns are out there? So Oceanwise, which was formerly the Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup, collected stats, well, they still do, but it's all on the beach cleanups and what's been collected on our beaches and marine water. But we don't have that kind of data for our streets and other areas of communities. So I see a gap there that maybe could be addressed. And I've also learned that we don't distinguish between litter and garbage. It's all garbage. And so that again is making the data on this kind of murky. And if we did all that, there would be benefits to us as a community, of course. Oh, sorry.
I'll let you wrap it up there.
Okay, so we could realize some savings here. And I'm told that the city crews spend about 4.5 hours per week on litter collection. So if you multiply that by 52 weeks, that's a lot of time and a cost. And so my last slide is I'm just going to say that I'm more than happy to volunteer, to put in some time and work, to work with council and staff if any of these ideas and strategies seem like something that we could implement. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Charlotte. That was a great presentation. Any questions for Dr. Gorley? Again, I just want to, it's great to have people like yourselves in the community. And, you know, it's funny, I lived in Texas and it's a very redneck state, right? It really is. But they got rid of theirs because they have that slogan, "Don't mess with Texas." A lot of people don't understand that it's about litter.
Yes.
And but they have this system down there. They report each other. So it's kind of well, it's kind of good and it's kind of bad, you know, that you're reporting your neighbors, but um, you know, overall for a state the size it is, it's pretty clean.
Yeah,
And
they've made really great progress on reducing their litter. Yeah.
just out of curiosity, have you researched what they do in Tokyo and Singapore? Because you know, I was there for 3 weeks in Tokyo, and I could not believe a city over 30 million people in metro Tokyo, and they don't even have garbage cans.
No, and I can say the same for Singapore. When we were
Yeah.
there, we were told before we went, don't even take any gum because you'll be fined. It was an astronomical fine if you're, you know, seen discarding gum. And so I think it's the messages that get out there is, you know, what really makes the difference. So, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Day?
I just want to thank you very much for your presentation. It is a long-term problem in Colwood, and this is not the first presentation I've seen about it. And I think that it's easy to kind of feel that it's beyond our control at times. But we have had some really positive things come out of trying to address litter on Ocean Boulevard. Our original McDonald's on the Colwood Strip was invited to participate in cleanups at the waterfront. And eventually, one of the managers ended up joining a committee with Colwood and working on other things as well. So it's just one more area, another way in to being involved in your community. And I think that we could do some programming that would invite our businesses to work with us on this solution
Yes.
and bring some community input into it. There are some people who are never going to care. There's a lot of us who do care and who um, would perhaps take up the challenge if they were a little more encouraged to join a group who's doing something about it. So I think you have some great ideas, and I hope that we can work on bringing them forward.
I do too. Thank you.
Councillor Jordison.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to thank you for that, Charlotte. That's a lot of effort that you put into that presentation, and appreciate that. I think it's a big balancing act between how many garbage cans do we, put out there, and sometimes they just fill up. People just empty their cars out in them, and that sort of thing. So yeah, and I wonder too, I would be curious to know from staff, not now, but I mean, how much furniture and different things that are discarded along the roadway that is collected, because I know the Carindale area, I see it quite often. I think one year we even saw a turkey, frozen turkey there. So like there's some, yeah, there's a lot of work to do. And I think that this is great to get the message out, and I think we can do better. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Olson. And I'm gonna have to move on, folks.
Yeah, I'll just be quick. I just wanted to make sure that you recognize, Charlotte, that everybody at this table really appreciates everything that you do. I know I see you around the neighborhood all of the time. So we all greatly appreciate the work that you're doing. And like Councillor Day said, some of these pilot projects that you have, like with the cigarette butts and whatnot, like I think there's some really fun ways to educate people. We do have a tendency to be a little bit of a lazy culture, I think, at times. And so the educational component is extremely important. So I think there's certainly going to be some discussions that will be had on some of these projects that you brought forward. So thank you.
I will commit to you, Charlotte. I will consider, the best way to do this is maybe I can form a select committee to tackle these solutions and maybe get other solutions and ideas. So I'll absolutely, I'll make that commitment to you. Thank you. Okay, at this point in time, we shall move on to new business. And Jen, do you want to start us all off here?
Certainly, thanks, Mayor Kobayashi. Tonight we'll be starting, or this afternoon rather, we'll be starting with the sewer utility service area. Colwood staff manage 10 pump stations, 55 kilometers of sanitary gravity mains, and 9 kilometers of sanitary force mains. Pump station maintenance requires frequent inspections by employees and regular cleaning with the use of degreasers. Sewer pumps are lifted out of the wet wells annually for closer inspection, maintenance, and cleaning. Employees also perform general property maintenance of pump stations to ensure they remain in good condition. Our team facilitate resident service connections in areas that are already serviced with the main line. We have seen a downward trend in requested connections. Staff continue to provide field review and on-site inspection of other utility works completed by contractors. Our team has initiated a 5-year sanitary flush and camera program in 2020 that reflects the industry standards for linear wastewater infrastructure maintenance and identifies key issues and repairs. There are 4 distinct council expectations of this area. We have not proposed any changes to those, and they are as follows: that sanitary systems be maintained to ensure safety and functionality for residents while maximizing the useful life of the infrastructure. Currently, maintenance works involves the tasks outlined in Appendix 2 of this profile. That residential sewer connections demonstrate excellent customer service and cost recovery. That staff provide prompt assistance to residents experiencing sewer issues. If a resident expresses a concern about a utility issue affecting a dwelling, city employees respond immediately to assess and assist as needed. And lastly, that the technological aspects of the sanitary system are kept current. In the event of a pump failure, systems are in place to ensure the station is still functional.
Thank you very
Pause
much.
for council.
Any additions, deletions? Councillor Day.
Thank you. It just occurred to me, and this may not be the right location for it, because we're talking sewer utility here. But one of the concerns that is alive and well for me and others in Colwood is our future capacity and our ability to meet residents' needs and requirements. So I just thought that I should mention that that isn't in our council expectations, but I feel that we should have a plan for the future and capacity, because the system that we have is finite and has limitations. So I'm looking to ensure that we're keeping our eye on the future needs of Colwood as well as the present.
That's a great point, and it's one of the measurements, actually, I would like a KPI that I would actually like to have as one of our measurements. So it's a great point. Thank you very much, Councillor Day. Seeing no other comments, we'll move on. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I am joined with our manager, Tanner, and Director of Public Works, Rob Boyle, and I'll turn it over to the two of them to provide you with a highlight of this service area.
Good evening or good afternoon, everyone. So it's been a busy day for the utilities. We're currently 8 of our pump stations out of 10 are currently impacted by the power outages. So we've been dealing through that today. Actually, this building is being powered by backup power today. So we'll touch on generators a little bit later, but just to quickly go through some performance measures and key stats. As Jen mentioned, we've seen a downward trend over the last few years for sewer connections by public works staff. Currently to date, we're only at 7 this year connected by public works. And I've highlighted here the linear meters of sanitary sewer flushed and inspected by camera. So the stat here, the 6,809 meters, is what we anticipate to be finished by the end of the year through CCTV. So we've highlighted that there. I did highlight we've had 96 service requests. That's not listed there through Tempest. Some of that's just been marked by our own staff, just dealing with IC inspections, proactive inspections, or just various things that we've listed as work performed by utility staff this year. Getting into some successes. One key thing that we did want to highlight this year, we were focused on the Wilford catchment, thinking that we could be seeing some I&I issues in that catchment. So this year when we focused our attention early in the CCTV program, and we did find something through that program where we did see it was a failed joint on Whale Road. So that was creating some considerable I&I to that pump station. So we were able to seal and repair that through a trenchless application, non-invasive technology that we use through contractor this year, instead of digging up Whale Road to do that repair, which ended up will create like significant cost savings for that repair. So that was a big success for us this year, finding that. While it was a challenge, it was also, I will highlight the success of our team for quickly responding and repairing the force main that failed outside Ocean Boulevard this year. It was a significant failure, and I feel limited staff responded excellent, and contractors that assisted with that repair. It was over the long weekend and we had minimal staff available, unfortunately, but it was highlighted through Millennia Research that all the work done there was very respectfully done, excavating inside a significant archaeological area. So sort of that was a highlight of a negative situation for us. Some upgrades we did to Portsmouth Lift Station, soft starters to variable frequency drives. I can highlight that if anyone's unsure of that. A variable frequency drive is, if I can sort of sum it up, as almost like warming up your vehicle. Without it, it sends a really strong electrical charge to the pump, which over time is really, sort of impacts the wear and tear. So a soft starter sort of slowly builds that charge up to full capacity. So it's actually better for maintenance of the pump and longevity of the pump. We did a fair amount of training this year for staff, which was great. We continue to work with the CRD to gain access to reliable flow monitoring data from colored pump stations with the CRD. Did just get some information just before this meeting that we're very close to having that finalized, and it sounds like we're getting some good information from the CRD there. So that will be beneficial for not only us, but I think that will be a great measuring tool for engineering as well. So we're looking forward to that coming online. And we replaced a faulty pump flush valve at the Wilford lift station. And I can sort of highlight quickly what a flush valve is it's mounted to the main pump. And what that will do is spurts out some positive pressure. So if there is anything that's inside the pump before it turns on, it's meant to release anything that's clogged in there. So you limit pump failures if it turns on and it's trying to overload the pump. And it also helps to, if there is any blanket of oil and grease, it sort of mixes that up before it gets into the pump. So sort of does two things in that sense. Yeah, so it's been a busy year for us. Challenges that we've highlighted here. It is a talking point with us in engineering about the existing Allendale lift station. It was deemed as a temporary station, which is still in effect. So it's running out of a CCAN on generators full time. So there is no hydro that is located to that site yet. So it just highlights something that we need to look at in that growing catchment area. Maintaining mechanical components to factory recommended standards. We are working on getting more proactive with our electrical inspections, but because there is such a mechanical component to lift stations, unfortunately, a lot of those components are being changed out because they have failed before we can actually proactively change them. So that's something we deal with on a constant basis. I did list that even though what it did highlight for us, especially for Ocean Boulevard at the force main, there is 2 mechanical fittings almost side by side in that location, and one failed. When we found that it failed, it appeared that the salt water had rusted away the mechanical fitting, which caused the failure. So once we have archaeological permitting in place next year, we will be looking to proactively look at the second mechanical fitting there before that one fails as well. It does sit a little bit higher in the water table, but it does make sense for us to do that proactively instead of having it fail again. So something we're looking forward to doing next year. And we did find something else with inspections this year, and we do have a hope to rehabilitate a key manhole on that is a part of the Ocean Pump Station force main. It's along Machosen Road, but over time, sewer gases have started to eat away at the concrete on the inside of the manhole, and it is quite a significant manhole where the force main sort of meets the gravity main. So we'll be looking to do a similar repair to what we did to try lining that manhole to save the longevity of it as opposed to excavating the entire manhole. So something, an opportunity for us next year. Getting into priorities, working with the CRD to establish flow monitoring. So that's listed as complete. The bulk of the work has been done. We're just finalizing sort of the final tedious points of that, and we should have access to that very soon. Investigated potential inflow and infiltration concern in Wilford was something we completed and was a success for us. And creating a capital replacement plan for SCADA components. This we worked with MPE Engineering earlier in this year, electrical consultant and SCADA consultant for us to look at our electrical components, and we do expect the bulk of their findings to help us build a proactive replacement plan for next year. So we've continued that one on in progress. But so for next year, we did highlight that we do want to investigate the costing model for the sewer connection fees. what we were finding this year is, in particular on arterial roadways, that we were not recovering all costs. So we are looking to do that. We have started looking in that soon and hope to bring something forward early in 2025 to get a handle on that. We are prioritizing, hopefully installing an emergency standby generator at Wilford Pump Station. Today, again, highlighted the significant need for that. That station in particular fills up quite fast. The catchment is growing, and it is, I would say, is the most isolated, most difficult pump station to get to. If you can imagine where the casino is, it sits in behind the casino, sort of tucked away. So we found this year with heavy traffic, it's very difficult to get to. So that is a priority for us. And overhauling the Portsmouth pump station and converting to flight pumps for next year. So that will be part of our capital replacement plan, but there is some retrofits to the station needed for that. And a few of the other ones I've highlighted. So I will leave it, the priorities there.
Questions?
Has a question?
Councillor Dave.
Thank you. I just, in the past, we have considered whether or not, due to climate change, we might need to retreat somewhat from the location of the lift station on Ocean Boulevard. And for various reasons, we felt that we were okay staying where we are. But it still comes back to me to wonder if that isn't something that we should be considering, is alternative plans for that pump station to be moved. And I'm just wanting to check in with you about whether that's something that you foresee in the future, or is that something that there's some good reason why we're not investigating that?
Hi, Your Worship. If I could jump in, I'll try to help answer Councillor Day's question. So the pump station was one of the pieces of infrastructure that we looked at in our coastal flood inundation mapping. One of the side projects related to that work was a specific analysis of the risk to the pump station. I think that work was 2022. The result was that they expect that the blue water flooding risk would be something that it doesn't face within the time frame of the service life of the facility, with some minor adjustments to the seawall that's on site there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? None? Over to you, Jen.
Thank you. So there's a number of aspects with respect to the operating budget that's supporting this service area that I'd like to highlight. To start, there is a new special initiative budget that's proposed, $72,000 to support a lift station safety devices retrofit strategy. So the purpose of this request is to continuously improve worker safety around the lift station wet wells. And so this is an initiative that our team would be undertaking in 2025. Moving into the operating budget to support core operations for this area, there are a few aspects that I would like to highlight. You heard from the team, one of our challenges and a priority is that of our sewer connection fees. So we reviewed our sewer connection fees to ensure full cost recovery back in 2022. Fast forward, with cost escalation, we are not recovering the costs of our residential sewer connections. And so that is a priority for us. This year we We did 7 connections. One of those was a bit of an anomaly in terms of the costs associated with that single connection was close to about $50,000, which is absolutely an anomaly. Typically, we're seeing costs around 12 to 15,000. And the typical connections that have actualized, the revenue generated has been just under $10,000. So we'll be bringing forth updated connection fees for council consideration to ensure that we can recover the costs directly associated with those connections. The city, we continue to levy parcel taxes in 2 sewer local area services. That's Central, which is in and around the Allendale, Souk Road area, Wildcat area, as well as East, which is Esquimalt Lagoon area. So the debt outstanding in those areas is continuing into the mid-2030s, mid-2040s. And so those parcel taxes will remain through that time. The sewer user fees. So we've highlighted for a number of years now the pressure on our sewer utility fees, primarily driven. 2021 was the first full year of the CRD's sewage treatment costs. So both the annual operating costs as well as the debt servicing for the McLaughlin plant coming online. Our financial plan continues to phase in our utility funding of those costs. So specifically, when you look at the CRD sewer maintenance line, our budget does fund 100% of those costs. And then when you jump down the sewer debt payment, so our budget is about $300,000, which is only a third of our share of the capital debt. So that is something that we continue to phase that in. Right now, overall, I want to draw your attention to, we are, with this updated draft budget, we're looking at about a 16% increase to our sewer user fee revenue. We don't expect that to translate into a 16% fee increase because we do have some new properties annually coming online that generate new utility revenue to support the funding in this area. So we will be bringing forward, every year we bring forward updated fees for council consideration, typically around the same time as the tax rates. And so we will bring forward options for council consideration. But there continues to be pressure on our utility fees. And under this financial plan, by 2027, that'll be the last year of the phase in. 2028 will be the first year that the city is funding 100% of the costs related to the sewage treatment. Our operating share fluctuates as our actual flows are monitored. And so annually our operating share fluctuates minor. We're currently sitting at about 3.7% of the overall sewage operating costs for that treatment facility, and our proportionate share of the debt is fixed. So that's based on the city's capacity. And that percentage is a little over 4%. And that's the 4.7 megaliter capacity that we have on that 108 megaliter plant. So I recognize that was a little long-winded there, but I did want to highlight those are the primary swings in the operating budget for our sewer utility. I'll pause there.
Thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that I heard your numbers correctly. Are flows that we're contributing to the sewage treatment plant or I didn't quite get it. Was it 3.7% of the total?
That percentage is our approximate share of the operating costs, which is not the same number that you're looking for. In terms of the city's capacity, we're actualizing about 63% of our capacity that we have committed to for this.
Okay. Yeah. And our capacity is about approximately 4% of the plant.
Approximately.
Yeah. Thank you. And just on the sewer connection fees, where you had the anomaly, is there, I recognize that this is an anomaly situation, not a everyone isn't in this position, but as we may get to more challenging areas who wish to hook up to sewer, seems like the further along in time we go, the closer we get to some of the more challenging areas where we're actually providing lines through rock and blasting may be required, etc. That may happen more often. It might be a normal extrapolation to suggest that our costs we could have anomalies again when we get to those places. Do we have a way to recoup those costs?
Through the chair, under our current bylaw, no, but we will be bringing forward that bylaw for consideration to ensure that we can ensure cost recovery.
Okay, so changes are in the works.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, that's great.
And so that concludes our presentation of the sewer utility service area. We are proposing to maintain service in this area.
Do you have the motion?
Do we have the motion we can put
Okay.
on the screen? Thank you.
That's great. We'll vote now. Okay, Councillor Jordan moves it. Councillor Grove seconds. Discussion. Councillor Day.
Just, I haven't done a very good job because I didn't get to prepare very much today. In terms of the expectations, the sewer utility priorities certainly should be approved, but I did suggest that we change our priorities a little bit to address future capacity for the city.
I had suggested that we put it in the measurement system.
Sorry?
I suggested, because it doesn't really belong here, I suggested that we put it as a metric, that we'll have a metric for.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
Is that good, right? Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Any opposed to the motion? Seeing none, motion carries. We'll move on. Thank you. Building and bylaw, please. Pretty mean looking team you got there.
Moving along to our building and bylaw service area. The building inspection department serves the community, including homeowners, designers, contractors, and professional consultants. Building officials protect people and property by ensuring that newly constructed and renovated buildings substantially conform to safety codes and regulations, and by helping clients avoid costly and time-consuming pitfalls by providing permits and inspection services. Our bylaw officers protect the safety and quality of life of residents by helping residents and businesses understand and align with the city's bylaws, and by being a watchful presence in our community. Our bylaw team receives and investigates complaints, monitors issues, and works with individuals to encourage voluntary compliance through education and mediation. When enforcement is required, bylaw officers issue tickets and may seek legal recourse. Council expectations for bylaw, we have proposed a change which is in bold before you. Council expectations for building services, we have not proposed any changes. The expectations include that the health, safety, and security of the public is our primary objective. This objective is followed by the below priorities: preventing damage to the environment, supporting our community standards, impact on the complainant and key stakeholders, nature of the complaint. That the city seeks voluntary compliance as our primary objective. The city provides reactive, proactive enforcement in accordance with the bylaw services activity report presentation. Comparable statistics are kept and reported publicly twice annually. With respect to building services, we apply regulations consistently, industry-leading turnaround time, upfront communications about the building process with residents in the industry. We offer a user-friendly approach. We use technology to lever efficiency and effectiveness of the department.
Thank you. Any additions, deletions, changes? just want to pipe in right now to say excellent job, both on building services and bylaws again this year. I still do not envy Rick and Steve on the bylaw side. It takes a special kind of person to do what you do. I can tell you that right now. And, for the most part, you guys just do a great job. So thank you very much for your service on that. That note, we'll move on.
And on that note, I will turn it over to our manager of building and bylaw, Byron Grant, to lead you through a recap of the past year's activities.
Good afternoon, council. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce Brittany Rowe, a building official of the city of Colwood and also a resident. So we're very lucky to have Brittany with us, and she'll go through what we consider some of our successes this year and challenges for the building department.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon. Thanks, Byron. Okay, so some of the successes of our department that we wanted to highlight are we've issued permits for the Beachlands Presentation Center, the Royal Commons Amenity Building and Condo Building. We issued the last single-family building permit for the north side of Royal Bay. Also the development at 468 Goldstream, the Island Health Mental Health and Addiction Center at 681 Allendale, and the BC Transit Warehouse at 650 Allendale, so it's Wildcat. We're working with Camosun College students involved in trades to better understand evolving building code and municipal requirements. The building team is helping lead the integrated project delivery process for the new RCMP building in Langford. Building team completed phase 2 of the City Hall office reconfiguration. The project was on time and within budget, creating a new meeting space. And we finalized the roadmap of the BC Energy Step Code and Zero Carbon Step Code in new buildings. Some of the challenges and opportunities identified for the building department are the province is requiring municipalities to collect more detailed data for units. This includes details such as whether the units are rental or not and how many bedrooms are in the units. The development teams in the organization, including our building team, are faced with a great deal of permit activity and, of course, navigating constant changes with building codes and regulations such as energy efficiency, adaptable dwelling units, and seismic changes.
And I'll continue with what we consider our successes for our bylaw team. So we continue to improve the lagoon pattern. We continue to improve the pattern of RV parking on our streets, and staff held a workshop with council to go through challenges with issues surrounding housing and homelessness this year, which we thought was productive. What we consider some of our challenges and or opportunities for the bylaw team. Homelessness issues do exist in Colwood, and the city continues to be as proactive as possible if faced with larger issues. Business licensing process have now changed with Tempest and our resourcing in the City Hall. So our bylaw team is happy to assist the corporate services team and also managing our business license process. And we're keen to explore an ongoing relationship with Wildwise to educate the community on how to live with wildlife. Happy to pause for any comments or questions there.
Just one quick question, and maybe this is Mr. Earl. So of the new dwelling units permitted for 2024, how many do we have to count against our quota? How many of those units?
I'd be happy to answer that.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
So thank you for the question. Definitely we deal with ebbs and flows in this business. So we do our best to forecast what we think will come down the pipe through rezoning applications, development permit applications, conversations with the proponents. We feel that we are still on track to issue 700 dwelling units this year. So as of today, we have issued permits for 451 new dwelling units. And as an example, we expect to issue our first multifamily building in the Beachlands area soon, which totals 181 units. So that's just about out the door. So we do still feel that we will hit our estimate of 700 units by this year for permits issued for dwelling units.
So is that what's counted? How do we, in the provincial government's program, is it building permits issued or is it the dwelling units permitted? Which number is it?
Thank you for the question, both. So they're wanting to see how many starts there are, how many finishes there are, a lot more detail with the types of dwelling units, even the number of bedrooms contained.
Okay.
So we're happy to have our new software Tempest in place to be able to track all these different types of reports that we have to run. So we feel we're in a good position for that. But in answer to your question, it's, at one point we reported dwelling units issued, but now we're also going to report completions on a lot more detail as well. So we would have that data
Okay,
available.
so our 5-year target was 940 something, I think, total, right? So I'm just trying to get in my head, how many do we count against that 940 for this year?
Hi, Your Worship. I thought this question would come up, so got some numbers. So in terms of our first reporting period, we're expected to have an interim report at the end of January of next year. And we're expected to have a total of 89 units completed. So when we last ran the report, we were 23% into that period. We had already completed 55% of the target. So 49 units total completed out of the 89 we need to be reporting on. So to Mr. Grant's point, we're on track to double.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for answering my question. That's what I thought. Thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I just wanted to address issues around building permits on areas that have been altered. So there's a number of areas in Colwood that are, they've been blasted or they've been changed from their original. And I would like to understand how you approach building permits on those areas that are significantly different, like they're not the original ground and they're certainly not on the original foundation, bedrock, whatever. So in terms of, do you simply follow the building code in terms of seismic risk and other issues, or are there additional requirements for some areas?
Yeah, thank you for the question. If I understand it correctly, a good simple way to explain it from a code perspective is anytime we see a building proposed on fill, we require the involvement completely of a geotechnical engineer to not only design or help with the design of the project, but also to see it through, inspect at different stages, and ultimately provide a closing document, essentially signing off on that review. So as an example, with something a little bit more modest, like the corner of a foundation has fill, we may go off of one report for that. But, Royal Bay, for example, every single house we consider to be on fill and definitely require as much involvement from a geotechnical engineer as we can.
Great, thank you.
That's great. Seeing no other questions, we'll move on to priorities and budget. So going through the status of what we had for our 2024 priorities in building, to go completely digital with building permit applications, that is complete. Return to council with options incentives to further lower carbon emissions in existing construction. That is complete. I just realized though, there may have been an oversight because that says existing construction. So that is our retrofit strategy. So that is in progress. So apologies for that oversight. We'll make that correction. Finalizing the roadmap for BC Energy Step Code and offering options to reduce carbon emissions in new construction. We consider that roadmap for new construction complete now. We've had a lot of discussion about that in these chambers. Improving facilities management of City Hall and the Fire Hall. You've heard from our Public Works team. We're happy to work closely with our Public Works team and use our insight as well with that.
Also proposing a new building bylaw for council consideration. We have that as in progress, along with possible options for incentive-based small development building permit fees that was mentioned when we discussed fees earlier. We feel it's prudent to hold off at this point for a couple reasons. One, we've had other competing priorities this year. And also two, possibly with when it comes to this retrofit strategy that we're exploring, there may be further amendments to our building bylaw. So we figure, well, instead of peppering you with amendments, we'll bring you one that hopefully captures all. So that's our status update for 2024 priorities. For 2025, we established a system for digital applications and software to track data that the province requires, such as rental units, number of bedrooms, as we mentioned. That is in place right now, so we're doing that currently. We continue to see success with managing modest construction projects for the city. So we're going to continue to help manage those. For an example, with Emery Hall, the accessible washrooms there, and also our addition at 170 Goldfinch. It's fun to do off the side of the desk, to be honest with you. So also help lead the integrated project delivery process for the new RCMP building. That's a big job, and another fun one to do off the side of our desk. So the resourcing for that project.
I love your honesty.
Thank you. But as far as resources go, say for example, I'm part of the project management team and pretty heavily involved in that. We will definitely share the resourcing for that project. So if we're providing staff, then other municipalities would be getting invoices. So we all seem to be on the same page with that. Also on there, review our firefighting capacity in the city currently and assist the fire department with a presentation to council and a review of our existing sprinkler bylaws. As I mentioned already, propose new building bylaw for council consideration along with possible amendments to fees, which may also include, if you're doing a deep energy retrofit, we could consider fees and how those are collected to ensure our services covered. So I'll pause there if anyone has any comments or questions. Nope, we're good. Okay. So moving on to our 2024 priorities for bylaw as an update, take a proactive approach again to ensure the city's in a good position to deal with issues surrounding homelessness. I don't know if we'll see that being complete, so you'll probably see that in progress for a while. We saw success, explore ways to educate council and the community on how to live with wildlife. We consider that complete, but we'll talk about that further in our 2025 priorities. Also, trial on-street parking management in certain areas and bring a draft policy to council for parking management. We talked enough about that last week, but that's in progress. Work with the community to determine areas for on-off leash dogs and possibly amend bylaw and animal control contract to reflect those new areas. In progress. Workshop with council to consider proactive reactive enforcement. We consider that complete. Unless you have any questions, you get the idea of how we approach things and why. And complete internal study of residential parking. Again, and Call would suggest areas that may, but that all ties into the trying the on-street parking management. So for 2025 priorities and bylaw, we've put down improve our biannual bylaw activity report to include and highlight what we consider hot topics in the city and strategies of enforcement. As mentioned, review on off-leash requirements and existing bylaws, contracts, and propose to harmonize with council endorsed parks management plans. Assist other teams with education surrounding pesticide use in the city and establish a plan for enforcement after that. Bring council a draft policy procedure for establishing time limited or residential parking areas as we see more density. I would amend that to say bring council to feedback on what we discussed. Review existing bylaws and suggest changes if necessary to improve living with wildlife, such as garbage management, as it's been mentioned this evening or afternoon rather. Take a proactive approach and ensure the city is in a good position to deal with homelessness. and work with our community to determine on off-leash dog areas and possible amendments to our bylaw and animal contracts. Yeah, pause there for any questions or comments.
Okay, thanks very much, Byron.
Okay.
Questions, council? Move on to budget.
Again, just before we get into the operating budget, the team did have a bylaw services activity report to present. So
Thank you. So this will look similar to the last time, but as opposed to going through each one and letting you try to pick one to talk about, we thought we'd pick two. So I said it would be exciting. I don't know how exciting this will be, but more than last time, I hope. We have our senior bylaw officer here to answer any questions that I might not know about. But without further ado. So again, we lay out our bylaws and the amount of complaints we received compared to last year. And then this is the chart where we approach proactively and reactively. The two topics that we decided to pull this year, the first one is dust. So I've got a bit of a synopsis here, but as you can see in the statistics, this year we received a total of 3 complaints about dust in the city, one for the Byzantin area, one in the Allendale district, and one in Royal Bay. We made contact with the developers in Royal Bay and monitored the situation closely over this past summer. In our visits, multiple water trucks were being used, or systems such as sprinklers on the main haul roads where the most dust is kicked up. The big issue is when there are dry conditions combined with extraordinarily strong winds. The Beachlands development is hoping to have most of their major earth moving completed by the end of this year or early next year, where you can witness this being a real issue when the wind kicks things up. As you are aware, Corey Park is well underway. We do feel that the developers in the area are making a good effort to manage this. When we discussed the concern this summer, a resident mentioned an area of concern on a haul road off of Latoria, and the developer appreciated that feedback and installed more sprinklers in that area. So we do feel they are being receptive. All of them try to draw from collection ponds as opposed to drawing from our limited Soup Reservoir supply. One of the most effective solutions is obviously for the planned development to occur and these areas be covered with parks, pavements, buildings. We will continue to monitor the situation, especially when the major grading has been completed to ensure there are measures in place. Yeah, so, you know, complicated subject. Happy to answer any questions we can or receive comments.
Just one question I have. And I don't know if we can make conclusions on this yet. I mean, that's a 10% decrease in complaints. Is there any correlation in your opinion? Because we've become more proactive? Because we've increased the proactivity rather than being reactive. I believe we did a couple areas from last year. I'm not sure. Is there a correlation or is this luck?
You know, we like to give how we receive complaints a lot of thought, and we assume that, you know, just because we only receive so many complaints, that doesn't necessarily mean that no one else is concerned about it. So say, for example, I play hockey in Victoria and I was sitting beside a resident of Colwood who lives in older Royal Bay, and he found out what I did for a living, and his concern was having to spray his house off from dust from time to time. You know, I also think that there may be an element there where if people are moving into Royal Bay in particular, I feel bad that Council Ward's not here tonight to hit me with some more questions, but you know, if you are choosing to live in Royal Bay, I mean, it's an active mine site, and you know, even once that development is complete, there'll still be a beach there. So, you know, I think there are probably more concerned people than what's reflected in the number of complaints. And like I say, once they've done all this major grading, we'll reassess and keep an eye. But, you know, going to our chart, we do have the dust bylaw as reactive, I believe. I'm just trying to find it on there. And so we'd be happy to move that to proactive because, you know, this, if council wanted us to, because we did keep an eye on things last summer, even though we weren't getting peppered with complaints to ensure that they are doing what they could. So if that helps answer your question there.
Yeah, I think it does. I just want to make sure that first chart was valuable to you, because I don't know, like, is lots of complaints good or complaints, or is lots of complaints, or have we done something that's proactive so we reduce the complaints? It's a hard thing to I know what you're gonna say to me most likely, but I just want to make sure it's a valuable tool for you of some sort.
I wish we could take some sort of credit for that being a small number of complaints, but I can't say that it was because of work that we did. You know, we're keen to keep an eye on the situation, and the developers so far seem pretty cooperative. And I should mention that not all of them are. So we have dealt with, you know, another development in Colwood where, you know, dust was a real issue and they weren't doing what they could. So out came the coupon book.
I try to stop my wife from that complaint.
We welcome them.
Councillor Jensen.
So she skewed the statistics.
Yeah,
What
she
you're
did.
saying. Yeah, thanks. This is great. And I think each year when we have this discussion, we refine this a little bit further. And let me ask this of you, Byron, as the team lead here. Are there any surprises in this data? I mean, a couple of things jump out to me, but anything that you guys found interesting?
Not me. Rick, do you have any comment on that?
Well, nothing really jumps out at me at this. So what were your thoughts?
Well, I find it, first off, some of the numbers are, I see a lot of the parking. I mean, so is it a good move that we've moved to being proactive in the parking? I see the numbers are, you know, look like they're pretty consistent with last year, but are we mitigating some of the hot spots with proactive patrols? I mean, is there a net benefit? And I know it's a chicken and egg thing, as the mayor has alluded, but
Parking is the #1 complaint with Colwood. And you're gonna see that number grow since we've pulled out the parking stat from our traffic and highways bylaw. So traffic and highway numbers will go down, you'll see the parking go up. But yeah, every day there's at least, say, 2 parking complaints.
and then I see overnight parking on the lagoon, we're at zeros. I
We have had no complaints.
find that difficult to believe, having driven across the lagoon some evenings, but
We have had no complaints about overnight parking. We still do the once a week early morning patrol,
Okay.
and there have been repeat offenders that get the coupons. So, but no complaints.
so are we happy with that level of service that we've applied to that parking across the lagoon there?
Oh, for sure. We're very happy without doing those early morning patrols, the numbers used to be a lot
Sure.
higher.
Sure.
So-
And the discussion did come up, and I was reminded by a resident recently about Byron. We had this discussion about how the bylaw may not address people living in their personal vehicles. Have we made progress in that at all? Because there are people living in their cars down there. I've seen it myself.
Yeah, thank you for the question. You know, certainly we like to understand the situation down there, and as we put in our expectations from council, we always approach it from a you know, we seek voluntary compliance. And you know, it's a sad situation that, you know, a lot of the cars that you see down there are essentially homeless people living in cars. So we do keep an inventory of all the different license plates and cars we see and try to understand those situations. We're always in contact with our provincial support groups, and we have them on all of our cell phones, and that's a good first step that we choose. So definitely walking a line down there. You know, we're being compassionate, but at the same time, it can't turn into an RV park. You know, it seems that the cars don't draw the negative attention as much as a 40-foot yellow RV does. but we feel that what the amount that we're attending, if we were to increase it to say 2 times a week, I don't think we'd see much difference there. So if that answers your question.
Thank you. That's great. And I think the only other surprise, I was trying to find it here. Outdoor burning. I'm shocked that that's still a thing. Like, it's been like a generation where we've had no leaf burning here in at least a long time anyways. Thank you. I'll yield to Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Councillor Day.
Thank you. I was just looking at where the big numbers are on your chart, and they really are around the parking issues and working on city property without a permit. And it just begs the question if maybe there are some problem areas where signage might make a difference on that proactive end of not trying to chase people down as much as make it really obvious that you're not doing what you should be doing. So just something that jumped into my head looking at your numbers. And in terms of some of the issues, especially around work without a permit or setback issues, those are things that I really hope that we will proactively look at, because you have a building permit, you know what they are or aren't supposed to be doing. They're probably better than any neighbor that would be complaining would have knowledge of. And that, I think, really represents an area where proactive approach would make sense, because you already have a permit that's required, you know what the parameters are for it. So those were 2 areas that jumped out to me as ways to make your life easier without making people angry with you.
Chair, may I respond?
Please.
Yeah, and I appreciate that comment, Councillor Day. I have worked in a municipality where we were actually directed by council to do the opposite, to react to building without permit. And it can slip pretty quickly when people understand that building inspectors can drive past without there being a permit required for an addition or something like that. So yeah, we try to make the process as pleasant as it possibly can be. Not saying it is, but yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Jordison.
Thank you. I just had a quick question about the sign bylaw complaints that have gone up, and I was just curious what that kind of, just an idea of what that might be. It says,
If I may answer that for you. So with developers, they want to put up signs, lots of other people, real estate agents put up we call them chicken feed signs. It sort of leads people to the houses. We're getting more complaints about that and those types of signs. So that's why those numbers have gone up.
oh, okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Olson.
Thank you. Just a quick question. I was curious about the fireworks and how we're being proactive in enforcing the bylaws with respect to fireworks. How are you being proactive with that? Like, can you just touch on that for me?
Sure. In the past, we used to work, like years ago, we used to work on Halloween night. We don't do that anymore. So now when people come in for their permits or we see people on the street and talking about fireworks, we try to explain to them what the rules and regulations are. We also have been working with the fire departments. The bylaw department and our front end staff have taken over the permit for fireworks this year. So that's new to us. So if we see somebody come into the front counter or we review their application of where they're going to light off the fireworks, some on it says Esquimalt Lagoon. Well, no, then we have to educate them on that. So we're proactive that way rather than not doing anything about it.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could add to that as well, you may have noticed at the fire department, they have that sign. We also try to, educate people through examples like that or our website about, the benefit of getting a permit with that. So I think education is the most effective path, and we consider that proactive in that case with fireworks.
Are we seeing a lot of like complaints that are with fireworks around Halloween? Cause like when I look in here, I don't think it's reporting for this past Halloween, but
If I may, so this past Halloween, we received no fireworks complaints. Which
it-
unlike years ago, we would have had.
do you
officers.
have the numbers of how many permits were approved?
I don't have that number in front of me for the
I would be
permits.
curious, I would be curious to see how many people are applying for permits for fireworks on Halloween. I know and I hate being a party pooper with fireworks too, but it is a really contentious issue in the neighborhood. You know, I think people are more tolerant on Halloween. I know, like, as somebody that has pets that are just, you know, I have to stay home and comfort my dogs on Halloween because they are terrified. But I'm just like the weeks, you know, the week leading up and the weekend prior and sometimes after, there's a lot of people that are, you know, have fireworks going off. But I would like to see that information, like how many people are applying for fireworks permits, just to compare that with, but
Noted as a stat for next
yeah,
time.
thank you.
Unless there are any other questions, I have this second topic. Okay. So wildlife, the second topic we chose this year is wildlife. While there are no bylaws to point to in our statistics, the presence of predators, securing attractants, and feeding wildlife has been a topic in the community. We appreciated working with the volunteer group Wildwise this year and their presentation to council. We would like to continue that relationship into this year and have it as a suggested priority to review a potential bylaw amendment to hold more people accountable, or to hold people more accountable to security garbage, as an example. While there is provincial legislation in place, they are very limited with resources, and the city may benefit from it having its own bylaw we can regulate. So that's why we had that as a suggested priority of this year.
Back to budget then?
Back to budget. Just wait a moment while we get it brought back up on screen.
My apologies for interrupting, but when we're done this session, can we take a 10-minute recess because our phone system has gone down and Diego needs to do a reboot and it could affect the meeting? If that's
Absolutely.
okay. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
So what we did want to highlight with respect to the building and bylaw operating budget is consideration of the building permit fees and the timing with which we recognize those fees to support the costs of this service delivery. So you heard from Byron earlier this afternoon, you know, we have seen an increase. So in 2023 and certainly into 2024, and we expect that we're going to hit close to those 700 units. The revenue related with that activity will continue to impact our operating budgets into 25 and even 2026. So typically, you know, 1 to 2 years where we're seeing this construction activity occur. And so it is something for us to consider twofold. One, there are a number of service areas throughout the organization that do support our building and development activity. And so you do see an internal allocation of some of this revenue to fund other areas, engineering, development services, our GIS area. We don't currently do an allocation to our more internal service, you know, finance, HR, for example. You know, there are many service areas, IT, that support this area. We don't cost that far, but certainly sort of the teams that are directly involved in building and development related activity, this permit revenue does provide funding to those areas. When we look forward, the 2025 draft budget, 2026 draft budget, those estimates is primarily related to residential development, Royal Bay, beachlands. And then as we move into year 3 and beyond, it's certainly much more of an estimate years 1 and 2, we're looking at actual permits that have gone out the door and our expectation of how that activity will actualize. With our increase in the volume that the team has been managing and the greater team, we haven't staffed up inside of the last couple of years. So we have, really seen stability in terms of the operating expense budget to support this area. Really, that was what I wanted to highlight. As you know, our animal control is under contract with the CRD. That contract is up for renewal in 2025. And so at that time, we expect we'll be bringing that back forth for council's consideration in terms of those services. Pleased to answer any questions you may have. Overall, we are proposing a maintenance of existing service delivery in both the areas of building and bylaw. Thank you.
Didn't see any questions. Can I get a motion, please? Okay. Council Olson and Council Jensen. Discussion? Seeing none. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. And we shall take a 5-minute, you need 5 minutes? 10? 10 minutes. Let's negotiate. 10 minutes. Thank you.
People in the South Island that don't have it right now.
Wow. We're lucky so far. We have it. Yeah, we have it.
Well, we had a smashing good time at the Pumpkin Fest.
I heard.
My granddaughter and I,
I heard it was phenomenal.
speaking of wildlife consideration, getting those pumpkins off the highway.
communities, timely processing of development applications, and lastly, support council decision-making with timely, concise, and informative reports. Pause for any council consideration of those
Okay, any
expectations.
additions, deletions, changes? This a petty point. I have a petty one. And that goes along with the first one with the clear communications, as far as, development applications. And the reports are phenomenal that we get right now from staff. But one thing that I notice, it's so hard. Is it possible when you give us one of those applications, instead of just giving us that one PDF showing where it is, if it's like I just poked on a couple of our neighboring municipalities, if you hit theirs, you could see where it is, like within their municipality. Do you know what I'm saying? Because right now what I have to do is I click onto it and I look at where it is, and then I go, where the heck is that street? And then I have to Google on my phone and then get the bigger map. Oh, it's this part of Colwood. It's a petty thing, but I was wondering if it's possible.
So just to be clear, provide a little community context within the community where it is.
Correct.
Yeah, we'll make sure that happens, your worship.
I think it's an easy thing, and it's petty, but I thought, well, I'm gonna bring it up while we're there. Thank you very much. Councillor Day, yes, please, go ahead.
Just to add to that point, I completely agree that that's something that I have found difficult. But also sometimes the most obvious roads aren't well marked on the map that we see. And it might just be because where you grabbed it from the map, the name of the road wasn't right in that spot. But if we could just add those in so that it's really clear kind of where the property is, that would be very helpful, I think.
That makes complete sense. We'll make sure we do that. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. And we shall move on. Thank you.
And with that, I'll turn it over to our Director of Engineering and Temporarily Development Services, John Rosenberg.
Yeah, temporarily, isn't that great? I was pretty fortunate this year to assist the team, and really fortunate that Jasmine has a great team in development services. It did actually make the job mostly enjoyable with a few challenges here and there, but this year with bringing Beachlands on board into the community and their development, it was a great opportunity to kind of set a tone with a new developer that we're going to have a long-term relationship with. So with that said, we'll just move forward into it, and Mari's going to start us off with the successes.
Okay, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So as John mentioned, I'm going to discuss our successes from the previous year. So starting with Tempest, the program of Tempest has continually proven to be an extremely valuable program for our department, particularly because the majority of what we do is property-based. So it has really improved our internal processes. So starting with inquiries, you may have noticed we have added inquiry statistics for this year. Tempest has given us the ability to more easily track that. So currently we're at almost 850 inquiries year to date. So that calculates out to be about 5 per day. And that's from phone calls, emails, or in-person inquiries. So Tempest is really allowing us to streamline the process of answering the inquiries. With Tempest, you simply just look up the address, and then any active applications will come up, and any historical information, permits, or applications. So it's just allowing us to be a lot more effective that way. It's also allowed us to improve our interdepartmental collaboration in terms of our internal referral process. So as part of all of our development applications, we send out referrals to other departments. And Tempest has really just allowed this process again to be more streamlined. We're receiving referrals in a more timely manner and just more fulsome comments. So that's been great. And then looking to 2025, we are working with the IT department to launch the Our City feature of Tempest. So that's just going to be making development applications more readily available online to our residents. It will include all plans and studies, and it will also include like a schedule of events of when a particular application will be going to planning and land use or council. So again, that's really just increasing transparency with our residents in the community. So we're certainly excited about that. Next success is the integration of committees of council into our application processes. So right now, the majority of our applications are going to the Planning and Land Use Committee. This committee has been a great tool for our department. They're asking really great technical questions, and it's really just another body of people to review applications in addition to staff review prior to the application going to council. So I think it's really just eased the decision making on your part to have another group of people vetting an application essentially. We have also been using other committees as well. So we did send an application to our Parks Committee, and then in later in November, we will be sending an application to the Environment Committee. So we look forward to further integration of committees next year. Next is collaboration with our community planning colleagues. So community and development planning is so interlinked, and collaboration is certainly a very integral part of planning amongst each other. So we've worked with them on complying with provincial legislation for bills 44, 46, and 47. We've worked with them on updates to our parking bylaws. So that's a great example of us working together. They generally will develop the bylaw, and then we are the ones who are implementing it. So we're more intimately familiar with the issues that might be experiencing within the community. And then we would work together to work on amendments to that bylaw. And then finally, we've been working on stage 2 of the Triangle Lands project with them. And then finally, we just wanted to touch on public engagement that our department has been working on. This isn't particularly related to the North Latoria project. We've piggybacked on a number of community events, such as the Ideas Fair, Music in the Park, and Eats and Beats. And we held a few of our own events as well, such as Pop-Up at Red Barn and then the North Latoria Street Party. So this has been a really exciting part actually for our department, and we've been really enjoying getting out into the community, and we are able to hear directly from residents of what their feedback and input is on a number of applications. So that's been a great opportunity, and was certainly nice to see a number of you there as well. Thank you.
Questions?
Any questions?
It's great having you back, Mara. Really great. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Oh, Councillor Jensen, and then Councillor Dayon.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks, Mari. This is great. I just was looking at one diagram here. I'm trying to find it. Am I reading this right? Subdivision processing PLA issuance. There's an increase in the length of time for issuing that permit. It looks.
That is correct.
I don't know what a PLA is and what constitutes an increase in this.
So that's our subdivision preliminary layout assessment. That is mostly to do with beachlands. The complexity of beachlands, and more importantly, establishing that relationship with them as a long-term partner with regards to the development. What we do and what we expect in Colwood can sometimes be different than what, say, Langford or other communities expect. So sometimes there's a bit of an iterative process with regards to what they'd like to submit and what we would like to accept. So it just took us a little longer. So a few of those PLAs that went through beachlands just took us longer. So to skew the stats, those will probably come right back in line next year.
Gotcha. And I see, I mean, it looks like the rest are staying the same or trending down. I mean, where do we fit in on like the time for issuing a permit as far as the region goes? I mean, are we leading? Are we trailing?
Oh, we are vastly ahead of almost all communities. We consistently get compliments with regards to our processing times. Other communities can take upwards of 2 years to get things processed. So it's a real tribute to Jasmine and some of the processes she's put in, and then the team following throughout the year in her absence. It shows to the program that really is working for us. Thank you.
Councillor D.
Thank you. I received feedback from some members of the community on some of the pop-up events and the events that have been held, that it's been difficult to find the materials that were presented at the event on the city website after the fact. So maybe there could be, I don't know, a button directing them to the, if you named it the event, and then the materials that were shared at the event were available, because not everybody can attend all of those events, and to be able to provide feedback, people need to be able to find the resources.
Excellent. We'll talk to Sandra about that and see what we can do. Thanks for that comment.
Perfect. Thank you. Move on.
Thank you, Worship. I'm just gonna walk into the challenges and opportunities. We're continuing to work with Tempest, and it, quite frankly, it's a tool I'm not really familiar with, but staff is definitely singing its praises. And I do know that when I ask for information, they seem to be able to send it to me within minutes. So from that particular point of view and that lens, it's excellent internal tool. And we're using it all the time to access bylaws, again, communicate across platforms. And it's constantly being improved, and it's really helped us on the front end with developers and different applications and so on. So we are getting better each and every year as we go on. So that's exciting. I think even Jasmine will notice a huge difference when she comes back. So that's awesome. We are, the second bullet point, we were getting excited that we weren't going to have any change or turnover finally in development services for a year. And we just had a staff member recently move on for a better opportunity. And it was encouraging to see that some of the mentoring and training that we've done helped him to acquire another position, elevated position. We're always encouraged to see staff that are furthering their careers, and then we're happy to do that. So we'll look at probably delaying that staff hire until Jasmine comes back, so she can fit the perfect member into the team for her, rather than having me be part of that process. So we'll delay that onboarding for the new staff in 2025 and look at what's going on moving forward. Again, Mari mentioned the committees. The committees have been a great resource. A little bit more work, and we're trying to be mindful of that with regards to applications, but that upfront work does help us with regards to getting it back to council sooner. So we haven't really seen a significant delay with adding that extra piece in. It allows us maybe in a little more of an informal process to get in front of the committee and then bring it forward and be a little more refined when we bring it to the council. So it may in a lot of ways help us inform council a little better, because we see some of the things that maybe were pieces that we were missing that the committee picked up. So it's been a pretty useful tool for us. We are continuing to do engagement, and this year we did do a lot more engagement. Mari mentioned North Latoria. Part of that public engagement was also with developers. We also held 6 different conversations with developers as well within that corridor to get their kind of insights on with regards to, developability and so on, and the economies that they're doing. So we're still working through that, and council should see the North Latoria plan here in the next few weeks. We're expanding notification radius. Council asked for that. You'll see that report coming forward in the next couple of weeks as well, to expand that notification radius. And we're also implemented a new, which has really been well received by the development community. And it's a preliminary application where you can come in ahead of time. And it's escaping me, Mari, DRC.
Development Review Committee.
Thank you, Development Review Committee. And it's been really well received. They can bring forward their first initial thoughts of what they'd like to see development wise. We put staff in the room and tell them where they're going sideways, where it's a no-go. We do have certain things that make us different than other communities. So it really helps them to put their best foot forward when we finally receive an application. Happy to take any questions if you have any.
Councillor D.
Thank you. I guess I'm having a bit of a difficulty with the pre-application meetings idea, in that I think that it encourages any development anywhere. And I really think that it would be beneficial for us to be looking at um, trying to build out in areas where it's the least expensive or there's the fewest impediments to development. So trying to find a way to put that allocation to war that we have for sewer and other infrastructures, in the triangle lands, in our core areas, in areas that are more easily accessible to transit, so that as we try to achieve our numbers, we're doing it at the most efficient cost to provide houses at a lower cost point for everyone's benefit.
Great point. That is part of that DRC process. So if a developer comes in and there's significant distance from, say, a sewer pipe, for instance, we'll let them know that ahead of time, because sometimes depending on that development, if they're not a professional type developer and they're just kind of tire kicking, we'll call it, then, right off the bat, that pretty well, we don't have that meeting. We basically tell them there's sewer not available in that area unless you're coming forward with a plan to bring that sewer out to that area, then there's really no point in having that meeting. So there is a little bit of vetting that goes on prior to that meeting. So you can't just show up and have, 6 or 7 staff in that room without us looking at it first to make sure it's something that's somewhat viable to have that conversation. So that is one of the processes that we do look at.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on. Thank you.
Thank you. So for 2024, just some of the processes, that priorities that we've worked on. The North Latoria Visioning Process Council will be seeing that in the near future. We've been working with community planning with regards to the Gateway and Triangle lands. We've been doing some ongoing work with regards to the Quarry Park expansion and development. We've been enhancing communications in various ways on the website to provide more information. We've worked on the sign bylaw and the riparian development permit guidelines, and council will be seeing something with regards to the guidelines for the riparian development stuff coming forward. We're just finishing up that engagement piece and putting together that program to bring forward for council consideration. We've been working with, and not so much recently, but in the front end of this year, BC Museum project. If you've been out that way lately, it is moving along. There's a lot of nice wood out there. And that project is nice to see coming to fruition. We've been working on various policies and guidelines, and we've also been implementing the OCP Parks Recreation Master Plan and various plans through various development processes. And with that, I'll let Mari talk about our 2025 priorities.
Okay, yes. So our top 3 priorities for 2025 will be continually to work on the North Latoria project. So as John mentioned, it will be coming forward to council shortly. Again, this has been an extremely collaborative process with residents and developers alike. So that's been a great integrative process, and it's also been an extremely comprehensive process actually developing the local area plan and the zone itself. We do have a draft that staff have been working on very hard. We've also sent it to consultants to conduct a peer review as well. So so we'll be wrapping that up. We will also be reviewing the rezoning applications for properties within that area as they come in once the LAP is adopted. Next is completing the updates to the environmental development permit guidelines. So again, this has been another very collaborative process. We have sent the draft DP guidelines to local QEPs and developers in the community to seek their feedback on how the proposed guidelines might impact them. So it's great to get their perspectives. As I mentioned, this is the application that we will be forwarding onto the Environment Committee for their feedback prior to going to council. And then finally, the expansion of Quarry and Promenade Park. So of course, that's been a really exciting process, and our team has been handling the rezoning and OCP amendment applications required for that project, which is actually going to Planning and Land Use this evening.
Any questions?
Just pass a comment. I met with the CEO of the Royal BC Museum last week, and she's fantastic. She just was so full of kudos with the support they've received from the city of Colwood. And so just pass that on. Thank you very much. And actual fact, her only issue, one and only issue, and I try to tackle this, I went straight to the BC Transit Board, but again, it's buses. And she foresees major issues with that right now. I mean, she's suffering it now. You wouldn't realize the number of workers that they have working over there and how many use buses. It shocked me. And, but she says she's got over 100 employees that will be working here every day, come 2026. They substantively will complete it December or 2025 December. But by the time you got to get all the permits and everything, they're looking at spring of 2026. Extremely happy with everything though. I mean, they're right on schedule and budget and all that stuff, but it's bus service. And in fact, so she's actually, because I went to our own West Shore representative on the BC Transit Board, and that happens to be the Mayor Little from the Chosen, as I found out. And I pleaded directly to her. I haven't got feedback. I did send a letter through, and so she's doing it now. I think Gablecraft is jumping on the bus too about this right now because it is an issue. The frustration they're having, and it's going to limit people from being employed there, because they're not car-centric people. The people that work in the archives building right now, you don't think of that, right? And so it was a bit of an eye-opener, but that is her big issue that she's trying to push on right now. Now, will they just do it for one? But it's more, it's much more than that. It's bigger. So I just thought I'd pass that on to you. That is something that's coming from, the business side from the BC Aviation Museum. Other than that, like she said, it's been what a great city to work with as far as, that's all she's getting from her developer and builders over there right now. So kudos.
Yeah, that's a team effort, your worship. Building department played a big piece of that, community planning, engineering. The whole team has actually been involved in that success. So it's great to hear that feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. We shall move on then, Jen.
So we are proposing to maintain service delivery in this area. With respect to the operating budget, I really didn't have anything in particular to highlight. We're seeing stability in this area with respect to what we previously anticipated for 2025 and what we've updated for 2025 and into 2026. As you heard highlighted, we did have some vacancies this year, which is why we're actualizing below budget in terms of the operating expenditures, but we are anticipating a full staffing complement moving into next year. And so we are proposing that we maintain the funding for this area. Pleased to answer any questions you may have. Otherwise, the staff recommendation is on the screen before you.
Don't see any right now, and I'll go for a motion. Grove and Olson, thank you very much. Discussion. See none. Any opposed? See none. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. We'll get to the next one. This will be the last one for today, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Kobayashi. So last service profile for this afternoon, that of engineering services for the city. Council expectations, we've not proposed any changes, and those include consistent application of the OCP, bylaws, strategic priorities, policies, and regulations of the city, effective and relevant management and oversight of traffic in Colwood, ensure that developers are aware of the city's policies and specifications during the application process in a timely and efficient manner. Delivery of high-quality capital works and services that meet our community's needs, engineering standards, and reflects our environment, changing climate, universal accessibility, and fiscal responsibility. Apply a street design that reflects the city's mode priorities: active, transit, goods and services, accessibility, and vehicles. Decisions will consider the climate emergency and how to mitigate and adapt to it. Lastly, asset management is supported through master plans that envision future and the implementation of an asset management system. We'll pause for council's consideration or any
Any
feedback.
changes, additions, deletions? Seeing none, we shall proceed. Thank you very much. Great.
Thank you, your worship. This is the engineering piece of it. And it's been a great year. It's been exciting. We've had a couple of disappointments and we'll highlight those. So maybe highlight's not the good word. We'll mention those tonight as well. We've had some great successes. So we'll get Joshua started talking about the successes.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Mayor and Council. So I'm going to go through the successes. Please feel free to interrupt me, stop, and I'll also pause at the end. One of our largest successes this year, I would say, would be the integration and implementation of our traffic model. We use this for TIAs. It helps with accuracy for evaluating developments. And then moving forward, and now when we're doing our TMP update, sorry, it's a bit loud, and future updates to the TMP, we look forward to using that, calibrating that, and continuing to see that accuracy in our decision making as we move forward. We're also working with the infrastructure committee currently in educating the use of the traffic model, how we developed it, how we plan to use it moving forward for decision making. And this will help us as we move forward with our TMP, I guess the outreach and the work with the community as we go and seek direction to finalize our TMP. So we're really excited about this model and what it holds for us in the future. We also adopted the subdivision servicing bylaw. This was long overdue. We'd had so many amendments to the previous one. We had out-of-date fees, all sorts of things. So the fee component, actually, the implementation of a 4% fee across the board with our servicing agreements. If you look at our operating budget at the end here, you'll see that our revenues are quite large, representative to previous years. And as long as development continues, we'll see that. So it's really seeing development pay for development. And I think that that's something we saw, recognized, looked at that fee, readjusted it. And then on the technical side, having that consistency of applied technical standards for storm, sanitary, any of those things. We've adopted MMCD, which is standard in the region with some specific Colwood intricacies, we'll call them, or specific colors and things like that. But generally speaking, we're more in line with industry, which helps for our staff to implement the work and then for contractors to complete the work. DCC bylaw, we did a minor update on our roads bylaw that brought our costs. So similar, there was some other discussion tonight about costs. I think it was, I don't actually recall now, but regardless, we had that bylaw. It's not that old, but with cost increases in construction, we found the rates that we were receiving for the DCCs in development were not representative of the cost coming through for the projects we were implementing. So we did a full minor update on that, which is you take all the existing projects, you inflate them based on today's cost, submit it back to the province, and we got that through, and now those rates are being applied. So hopefully a more sustainable program for the future. We completed the Latoria and VMP roundabout. I won't get too much into the details. It's been really successful in terms of the implementation. There are some, or a few complaints, not many, relative to fit, function, use. And I think some of that is it takes time for that new traffic pattern. But staff are working with any residents that do have complaints or concerns actively. Sidewalk project, so Hagel completed, went really, really well. Vast majority of the people in the community have given us great feedback that it's a positive thing. It's some of the toughest work we've done. John told me that early in my starting here, that infill work is so challenging. You're changing people's lives in that specific neighborhood. But from a community amenity standpoint and even neighborhood amenity, it's such a benefit. So dancing that line with the community and the residents of that actual neighborhood as the work progresses can be challenging, but the outcome is and has been awesome there. And then on Lagoon and Kelly, we're well underway. It's even possible we might see both of those completed before the end of the year, which is fantastic. I should mention there our partner is the CRD. There was some comments during our service review for our roads team relative to the paving program. We collaborated with them relative to the paving program and our project. CRD had a water main. We all came together, and that was a huge success for our group, and I think theirs as well. So we did want to give some kudos to the CRD and the water department there, as well as our public works partners. And we'll continue to try to do that with projects moving forward. I'll just go a little faster here because I'm taking up a lot of time, but dam safety review, that's a legislative requirement. We've had that completed, and we're working with the dam safety inspector this year, hopefully to close all our requirements out, and we'll be good for another 10 years, I believe. Lagoon Bridge report is complete, recommendations are made, and the required repairs are under contract right now, should be completed by December. You're probably seeing traffic advisories, maybe even the odd comment from a resident relative to closures. That work is ongoing and going very well. Brenda Lane, huge success in getting the stormwater conveyed from our stormwater system down to the toe of the slope. The slope itself, John will speak to a little bit, or maybe he won't. We'll see the challenges and opportunity section. It's still an ongoing thing. We'll get to it in that section if we need to. And then the last one is the Tempest integration. Huge success. We've had other departments talk about it as well. From a business operations standpoint, it's been very difficult to implement, but since implementation and our daily use, we're just seeing the accuracy in our information, the accessibility of our information, the continuity with departments, the referral process. It's just streamlined. There's so many holes that are plugged. There's way less things falling through the cracks, and we're really enjoying that software being implemented. With that, I'll hand it over for challenges.
Any questions, George?
Nope.
Great. Good. Challenges and opportunity wise, we continue to work with the public with regards to traffic and awareness and safety issues. And a lot of that's community driven and things keep popping up. So one of the things that you're going to see as part of this budget request is in special initiatives, we've enhanced the traffic pilot calming project. And I'm sure Jen will talk about it under special initiatives. We've increased our monitoring of activities with regards to pedestrian and cycling counters. Part of our presentation, you can see various counters and activity that's going on throughout the community. We've also picked up some traffic counters, both local and collector type roads. So we're now able to in-house count traffic on our major arterial and collector roads like Souk, VMP. So we're going to start that program to get a better handle on our vehicles as well. We've also got portable cycling and pedestrian counters, so we'll be able to put them up in various areas. So once we complete a project, we'll be able to actually see a pre and post impact with regards to whether it's a traffic impact or pedestrian or cycling impact. So we're going to try to stay on top of that with regards to monitoring that. We're continuing to work in the Allendale area with regards to drainage upgrades. We've been talking to landowners there, seeing if we can come up with a solution that works both for the individual landowners and the community itself. We're continuing on with asset management. We're still getting lots of cost variability and uncertainty. The sidewalk project has been a tremendous success. Joshua talked about the communication with the CRD. We anticipate we'll be well under budget on that project, which I know that's what I said, under budget. We haven't done that in a while in the construction area, but I'm fairly confident that's going to occur. And that goes up to Joshua and his team. They did a great job. Tyler Pettipies, Josh Andrews. They really stayed on top of those projects. And we actually had a good partner with Northridge as well. They've been very accommodating with regards to the CRD work and our public works paving. So it really is an example when we can get all these entities together and communicate and be collaborative that we can have some successes. So that really was, and because Joshua was part of it, he kind of low-lighted it, but it was a great success, the Hago Road project specifically. And we have been working with our collaboration with other entities such as Hydro and so on. And we get successes, we get step backs. And, you know, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the Galloping Goose project. We are struggling there. The CRD has been difficult. Their parks area, they hold the lease with regards to the ministry, and the ministry won't do anything unless the CRD says yes. And they have been difficult. At one point, they've asked for a twinning of a sewer main. We did manage to negotiate the cost of that twinning to be theirs, but that's been another delay with regards to getting the design in place. Our bridge will be located on top of their sewer main, and they just want to create a redundancy and won't sign off on the project. So that has been problematic. So we are working on that. SureSpan has been part of this process, and they understand, but we do anticipate, depending on when we start, we may have some weather issues that may lead to cost. But I guess the good news is we're later than we thought we were gonna be, so we don't think we'll be doing winter work, which is actually in some ways a saving grace, so we won't be paying for heating forms and those kinds of things. But at this point, we don't see any concern whatsoever with regards to meeting our timeline to get our grants. And if we ever think that that's even close to being a remote possibility, we'll be back before council to see if you can help us out on that end. But we are hoping to perhaps get something started by the end of the year. Joshua mentioned Paranda Slope. The storm work itself was really causing us concern with regard to the stability of that slope. Joshua managed to secure that project, get that work done. And moving forward, we're going to look to see how we can collaborate with the Foreshore project and that Paranda Slope area and do all that geotechnical work at the same time and see what we need to do there to stabilize that slope. So it'll be an opportunity to use economies of scale with that project and do the two hand in hand. So Josh will be involved in that and moving forward. Any questions?
Just let me know with that CRD issue. I mean, let me know, really.
Yeah.
If you need my help, I'm not afraid to stick up my hand and get in there. I really am not.
Excellent. We appreciate the support, Worship.
It's unacceptable.
Okay.
And the counters, but so my quick question is the counters, how many are we actually buying and what type of counters are they?
Yeah, I'll actually, if I may, through the chair, I'll actually go a little bit into our performance measures and in detail here, but I'll go with the counters first. So we have 7.
Okay.
So we purchased 7, of which 5 are the pedestal style. So they look like a little bollard, and they've got trace wires through the asphalt or through the pack material, and then a camera and infrared camera as well. We have 2 totems, which are the large style. We have none in the region. They'll be the first of their kind installed. The difficulty was we had planned to install them with the Galloping Goose Bridge. Hasn't started yet, and the Colwood Waterfront Stewardship pathway, which we're likely going to look at a different location because that project's quite far out as well. 2 other ones are pole mounted, so they're just cameras themselves, and all of which are measuring pedestrians and cyclists or a combo of thereof. And some of them actually measure cars as well. So we're getting some amazing data. You'll see that highlighted on the second page of our data there. It's really fantastic. We're excited. It's our first year. So 2024 will be our first full year of data. Thank you. There it is. And then in 2025, we'll have something to compare to. So we're really looking forward to seeing some of these metrics go through. But even in the interim, without a full data set, we're seeing counts similar to the Galloping Goose at Whale and Wilford. So use at Ryder Hedgedall, south of Royal Bay Secondary, although it's a different mix of pedestrian and cyclists, we're getting 180,000 counts at that counter. That's fantastic, amazing data. And only to see that increase or change over time, we can then use that for decision making. Do we make a wider path? Do we not? Where do we invest? So we're really excited to see some of the data we can bring forward and how we can influence our decision making with solid, sound decision making. So we're looking forward to that.
I think it's great. This is blows my mind.
Yeah, so we're really excited. And the other piece that's neat is while these 7 counters are in Colwood right now, and what will be 9 counters, it's part of a larger network. So we went with Eco Counter because it's what the CRD is using, what Victoria is using. So there's a single interface that anybody in the region can use. They can get the counts, they can see the data. So can we. So we're using comparative data from CRD counts. We have Langford count. We have all different counts we can use and ins and outs. So we're looking to implement even other locations so we can start to isolate on the Goose how many people are originating in Colwood, end of trip in Colwood. Like we'll start to get that data and see where people are going in our community, and it's really neat. Just jumping back a page, I'll go back into our performance measures and keys here. Sorry, or key stats. We heard you speak tonight about a sewer capacity metric. We're happy to implement that. That's no issue at all. I would even put forward that perhaps we can amend that for the final version when it comes to council. We could add that as a line. We can go back as far as 2020. I believe we have all the data from CRD. So that's something we can put in. We have already reached out to the CRD on that note about our capacity and what is the process to get or seek additional capacity. The path right now is to borrow or steal from other municipalities. And there's other municipalities that have a much higher % of their capacity being used right now. So the way CRD put it to us, I think at the time we were in our early 60%, maybe late 50% of our capacity. And they said, you don't even start the conversation until you're up into the 80s and 90s. So we will keep that conversation going. But rest assured, we're happy to put that metric in, and we'll keep that conversation live for sure. On this data, I'll just point out a couple other pieces there. So relative to Tempest and interdepartmental work, we have a new metric, which is our plan review referrals from other departments. So we tracked that from last year, which was 131, and year to date so far this year is 155. So that's any kind of building permit, development permit, rezoning, anything like that, coming to engineering, being referred by or reviewed by engineering and referred back. So just a bit of a sense of what kind of applications are coming through our doors. And then traffic counts conducted. John spoke to our new counter we have for collectors and arterials. Again, we're starting to track how many counts we're doing in our community, and we'll keep that going in future years. You can see all the assets we received from developers. And then the other one I wanted to dive in a little bit more on was the BC Transit data. So you can see here, just year to date, we've already exceeded last year's total. So that's onboardings. We're working with BC Transit to try to get aggregated data to understand what time of day, if we're seeing peaks and valleys in that, because we can have a bus stop that sees a ton of trips, but it's consistent throughout the day. So then their shelter might be appropriate. But if it's peaked in the morning and peaked in the PM, we want to then see an upside shelter. So we're trying to work with them to see how that works. We're also working with them relative to the Q Jumper Lane project. You've probably seen that work inside of View Royal. That project is supposed to continue into Colwood, and we're actively working with BC Transit and some private property owners there to see that come to fruition, as well as bus service. So you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, about the request for service to BC Museum. So we've been in contact with Beachlands, BC Transit, and ourselves about a service there, and they do plan to implement a service both in and out, right in front of the museum there. I think it's sometime early or mid next year. So we're working with Beachlands to ensure that there's space in their frontage improvements to put a temporary bus stop until they do the final for full Machosen build out. So yeah. Right. Right. So maybe what we're getting is the recommendation from their staff up to that level, and it's getting denied. I don't know, but staff on their level are talking to us. So that's interesting in and of itself. Yeah. 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 Any questions relative to the metrics? Okay.
Councillor Jensen, sorry.
Thank you, worship. Lots of good meat on the bone there. I'm going to suggest your Ryder Hesdall data is skewed with the 4 trips a day someone makes to Starbucks across the way there.
Still a trip.
Stat's a stat. I love it. I see a little bit of feedback here about some of the Allendale flood mitigation. But what I don't see is anything about the actual Ponco property that's now a community asset. But there's been some works that have gone on there. Can you speak to the improvements that have been made there and whether, you know, I guess we're looking for affirmation that this was a move in the right direction to help us mitigate some of this in the first place.
Yeah, we haven't done much from a stormwater attenuation with the property that we've purchased recently. But we are working with the owner between the Allendale lands and that land that we purchased, the Tri-Stone properties. We are working with them with regards to looking at their current zoning, perhaps acquiring some land that would be dual purpose for community amenity and stormwater attenuation. So that's an ongoing discussion, and we've just recently actually started that same kind of discussion with the property owners in the other area down in Allendale, just off Allendale. So both those areas are being looked at, and concurrently we're working on a design plan for that storm area so that we know what we need to do with regards to a solution, and then work to acquire the land to help that solution. A small little piece that's going into that is Tanner had mentioned with regards to the Allendale sewer lift station. We currently don't have a location for that other than in the right of way. So if we do acquire some land in that area, we'll try to relocate that sewer lift station onto some land that we acquire so that we can provide certainty with regards to service in that lift station. So all of those are kind of some balls that are in their infancy right now, but they are in the air.
And I mean, we've had a couple of rain events, but I mean, we're in good order as far as we haven't had any flooded homes or anything this season yet, or?
Not at this point, no. Again, talking to Tanner, they've been able to stay on top of it, and we haven't experienced anything abnormal at this point.
Great. And then just back to the CRD for a second, Mr. Mayor, and I like your thoughts, and I made a note to myself here. Am I right in understanding that we are going to add to the CRD's property by putting in a pedestrian bridge, and they are trying to extort our taxpayers to put in a chunk of sewer? Is that my read?
No, it was their suggestion that that might be a cost borne by the project. And we were pretty frank with them with regards to no, it was not. That redundancy is not in our minds needed. Being able to, with our unfortunate first misstep when we start our geotechnical investigation and actually hit the sewer pipe, it was demonstrated that we actually can pump around and have it works if something were to occur. So staff felt that that redundancy wasn't required because there was a workaround. They insisted through that conversation, and the end result was that we agreed that they could twin the pipe, but it would be at their expense. So that'll be an extra cost that SureSpan, our contractor, will levy to the CRD, but they'll perform the works because it is their work site. So that will be at the CRD's cost.
So I think, Mr. Mayor, quite frankly, it's time for some political pressure, and I just wonder if drafting a strongly well-articulated letter from council to the CRD might affirm our position here. And
Okay, it's, pardon me, a great idea. I need staff to ask me to do this. Like, I need, there's a point in time, right? The cavalry, you're gonna ask the cavalry to come in. So I'm more than happy. I am not afraid of this. This is one thing I'm not afraid of doing.
Thank you, Your Worship. That is a poignant point. We have actually had internal discussions, and we are right in that cusp area. So I may have started a conversation that I was hoping would lead to support, which is what I've achieved at this point. And if we see the next roadblock doesn't come down, we definitely will reach out to Your Worship to help us remove that roadblock.
I'll leave it with all of you. It sounds like we're moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's, because the time constraints, let's move on to priorities and then budget. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll go through priorities. If you look at the list, basically everything that is deemed complete was a success that I already read. So I'll go through into the in progress for 2024 with the anticipation of completing this year. So the bus shelter program, we're putting 2 new shelters in this year, plan to do it again next year. It's going well. We plan to complete before the end of the year. Allendale, Patterson Pit storm drainage, continuing to work with landowners. I think John already spoke to that a little bit, and working on, pardon me, on that project with the anticipated completion of 2024. Finalization of the acquisition of Bex Hill lands. Just got an update on this one today. We're in the final stages of working with that private strata. It's been an interesting process, but I think we're nearly there. Also anticipating completion before the end of the year. Now in progress, but deferred to 2025. Transportation master plan, as I alluded to before, the model's been instrumental, so that will continue into 2025, and we'll leverage that work and work with the community and engagement, both of committee, council, and the public. Developing a stormwater DCC, actively working with those local areas in the Allendale and Patterson Pit, and then technical consultants brought on board, as well as a technical consultant for the drafting of the DCC. All going to happen in 2025. Sanitary sewer network expansion plan. So the not first step, we've been working on this for a long time, but the next step in this is a workshop. So a workshop with council. I think you hopefully all have an invite in your calendar from November 19th. Staff are looking forward to that, bringing that information to you, and we look forward to that conversation. Working with BC Transit to facilitate transit priority projects. So again, that I already alluded to that relative to the Q Jumper Lane and View Royal, continuing through to Colwood. And then the last one, deferred to 2025, is our complete 5, 30, and 100-year capital plans for major linear infrastructure. So 5-year, typically we do inside of financial planning, 30-year master planning, 100-year sustainable infrastructure plans. So we have all of those sort of addressed, but it's bringing them all together into a nice little bouquet, I guess, and then just getting it official. So,
And then our main priorities for 25 will be on the Galloping Goose. At this point, we do anticipate we'll have it done by the end of 2025. We'll continue to work on the transportation master plan, start that public engagement, work through that process with the model. Bring forward a DCC storm bylaw for council to consider, and then work on the sewer network expansion plan, work on the BC Transit project, and again, work on the asset management 5, 30, and 100-year program. Any questions? Happy to answer.
Seeing none, we'll go on to budget.
Thank you. And I don't mean to rush this. So if there's any aspect of the budget we wish to revisit when we introduce in early December, let's do so. So there are a couple of new special initiatives that are proposed for this area. We're proposing utilizing up to $30,000 from our sewer reserves to support the conversion of existing sanitary sewer hydraulic model. And so this conversion is essential. We don't believe this is a discretionary spend to avoid potential data loss and ensure continued functionality of our sewer model. You also heard reference to what we're referring to as a Vision Zero action plan. We are seeking grant funding to support the establishment of a comprehensive strategy to reduce and ultimately eliminate traffic-related deaths, serious injuries. There's 2 staffing that we did want to highlight with respect to this area. So we are proposing a 2-year initiative to support funding of an engineering student to support service delivery in this area. In addition, when you look at the operating budget and within this profile, you'll see that we are proposing to maintain existing service delivery. However, we are proposing to increase service levels in 2026 and into 2027 with the addition of a transportation engineer. Also didn't want to underestimate the impact that the subdivision and servicing bylaw has had in terms of revenue generated to support service delivery related to infrastructure and development in this area with respect specifically to our works and services admin fee. So that increase from 1% to 4% has been reflected in our current year budgets. And we've refined the 2025 draft budget in part based on existing servicing agreements that we already have and that we'll be administering into 2025. So pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Just a quick clarification, Jen. Special initiatives. So fixed period of time. They're fixed a cost over a period of time. So like the engineering student is like 2025, 2026, and there's no continuation after that. It's not
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, a special initiative is a one-time expenditure outside of core operations. And I was remiss, there is a third, which is that of transportation safety initiatives on page Is it 111 there? So that's a $500,000 multi-year initiative. So we're proposing $100,000 annually. And again, we're seeking, believe it's partial grant funding for this program.
Just a quick question for you, Joshua, then, the sewer hydraulic model that you want to get, is this something that someone else has developed that we can just buy it from them and copy it and say, we're good? Or is that your tactic here, or?
I wish that were the case. My understanding relative to our model is it was developed in a specific software, and that software is at end of life. So there's a transfer of that software to a new version.
Okay.
So it's like an update to AutoCAD, except it's a different software. So
I
we're
understand what
just,
you're saying.
yeah, we're stuck.
Yeah, engineers were crazy.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Thank you for the question, but a frustrating answer.
yes, thank you. So let's see any other questions? Oh, what? Counselor Day.
I just want to look at the safety initiatives you just had up on the screen, $100,000 a year for 5 years. So this budget, our previous budget was $15,000, which was quickly eaten up, obviously. But that's a pretty big jump from $15,000 to $100,000 a year. And I don't quite understand entirely what we're getting for 100,000. Is that a staff person? Is that a study? What are we getting here?
Thank you, Councillor Day. That is the opportunity for us to react to situations that occur throughout the year. What's happening now, and a great example is last year we had Cecil Blog and Souk Road. We had a request to put a crosswalk in there, and it was a formal budget request. We dropped the ball, we missed it, we brought it back online. But it's something now with this 100,000, if we have to do a pedestrian signal activated flashing type activation, they can be $50,000 to $75,000. This allows us to maybe take on one major project a year plus a couple of smaller ancillary type projects where it's just a crosswalk install or some signage installs, but it allows us to be nimble with regards to requests. And it also allows us, once we get the data with our new mobility counters for cyclists, pedestrians, and traffic, once we validate that the concern is legitimate, then we'll be able to have the funding in place to then prioritize it using volume metrics and speed metrics and so on, and then start implementing these as they come online. And what you'll probably see as part of this 5-year program is that this year we'll implement a project list, bring them forward to council for consideration, and this provides us the funding to move forward with those projects.
Yeah, for something that this is the first time that I'm seeing it, I find it just a little difficult, given the pressures that we're under. I mean, it's not that I don't want to do these things. It's just that I'm not sure that I want to budget $100,000 and then figure out where we're going to spend it. That is.
Yeah,
I guess sitting oddly with me.
You got a great point. I agree with you, Councilor Day, but I guess the way I look at it is the funding source at this point in time. And this is why it doesn't concern me, because we haven't made a commitment. It's not and just correct me if I'm wrong, Jen, it's not a tax increase, because I'm just looking at the funding sources here. It looks like most of these things are grants anyways. That's how I interpreted this.
Thank you for the question. I don't have the specifics of the extent to which the grant would provide funding versus what the city would be looking to commit. And in addition, depending on how the spend of this actualize, that you may see this incorporated into our capital program. You know, if it is in fact for crosswalk infrastructure or that sort of thing, you will see this returned with consideration of our capital plan.
Yeah, so I would be much more comfortable if this came forward with specific initiatives. For example, we've heard from several citizens about Latoria Road and the need for a crosswalk to get across the street to the transit stop. It's an area that would require a flashing light system in order to make it safe. And so I'm just arguing that I'm not comfortable with $100,000 a year being allocated to an unidentified set of goals. I would be more interested in seeing something come back that was to develop X number of crosswalks per year, because we know there's going to be places where they're needed and make a difference. And utilizing the grant funding from ICBC, something we have done in the past, it assisted with the intersection at West Shore Parks and Rec that we just changed this year. So I'm not convinced. I think this needs more work. That's just where I'm at.
Councillor Jordison.
Thanks. And I agree with Councillor Day, but I also, I think if we were able to see the funding source and what that allocation looks like, it might be an easier sell, if that's possible.
Yeah, the grant piece is a little difficult to assess because ICBC's a great partner with regards to safety initiatives. But it really depends on what that safety initiative looks like and the metrics we use to justify so if there's crash data in the area, then they tend to fund higher. So part of that is that piece of unknown, whether it'd be like a 10% grant or 25 or 30% grant. So it's hard to put a grant funding, but we do know there's opportunities out there to utilize it. It is about giving us the ability to pivot to various projects like the Latoria ask. What we don't want to do is just have somebody ask and then we give it to them and not have it justified through some of our counts and metrics. So, but we do want to be able to, once we understand that it is needed and it's justified, that we can move quickly. So that was the intent, but I do understand the hesitancy for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to be clear, these are reactive spends, correct? So as things come up within the community or through meetings, through committees, these projects would come forward for consideration to utilize this funding.
Exactly. So if council asks us to look at a specific area, because I've heard a concern from a citizen, we can throw a couple counters up, take a look at it, come back with some data, and then we have a funding source that's readily available for us to do so.
Right. So we don't know what these projects are yet, potentially.
We have an idea of a couple of them that are on the list now that we're
Yeah.
working through, but we don't have a specific ask at this time or a specific project to move forward. No.
Are we working on the grant funding for this already, for this area?
We currently have a grant now for the Suk-Cisa blog one that we've put in, but we're also waiting for authority from the ministry to give us permission to install the crosswalk.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have an issue with this because I know, and we're the worst people for it as council. We come down and we tell you guys, go do this, and where's the money coming from? So there's a reality check here. And if everyone, I mean, there is a compromise on this, of course, the compromise is that if certain people around the table, including myself, believe that this is just giving you a blank check, then we could change the process where you say, I know you've got so much spending authority right now, but if it's going to make people feel happier and we just have these as earmarked dollars right now, and that, it requires one more step that, you come back and tell us what you're going to do with it after you've got whatever approvals, then I think you as a staff would be okay with that.
100%, your worship, we can work with that for sure.
I mean, I think that's the great compromise on this. I believe anyways. So Councillor Grove, Councillor Jensen, I'd like to excuse you at this point in time, because you do have a meeting that you have to chair in 15 minutes. 5 minutes. Oh, wow. Councillor Grove.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank Councillor Jensen for his generosity with his time. I think in this issue, I feel the same way. We had a bad year this year, in my opinion, in terms of the public problems and issues with this very subject. And I felt badly that we were not able to respond. It seemed to be very powerfully anyway. And this seems to be a solution to that bind that I felt we were in. I could be completely wrong about that assessment, but that's kind of how I felt. So I have no problem with this if the funding processes, as the mayor just outlined, were in place. I'd be perfectly happy with that. Thank you.
Okay, do we need a special motion for that, Jen, or is that going to be understood?
Understood. No motion.
Thank you very much. Okay, so let's move on to budget then.
So with that, that was the two main factors that I did want to highlight. So we are proposing to maintain service delivery in this area with the understanding that we're proposing an increase in 26 with respect to the transportation engineer that's been outlined.
Motion, okay, thank you very much. Grove and Jordison. Discussion. And any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries unanimous. Motion for adjournment, please. Thank you much, Jensen and Olson. Any opposed? Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Great meeting. Great.